The July 20th, 2023 hearing for the Planning and Land Development Regulation Commission is now called to order. And could I please have everyone silence any audible devices that you may have? And if you would please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for joining us this morning, those of you in the chambers and those of you listening on the PLDRC webinar. Ms. Tucker, could I please have a roll call?
Member Bender. Member Shelley. Here. Member Costa.
Here.
Member Patterson.
Here.
Member Sixma.
Here.
Chair Mills.
Here.
And our District 4 representative is currently vacant.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Tucker. And we do have minutes from June 15th, 2023 for discussion. Any discussion on those minutes?
I'd like to make a motion of approval.
Okay. Okay, I got a motion to approve the minutes from June 15th, 2023 from Ms. Shelley and a second for Mr. Sixma. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, before we get started here this morning, we do have, if you're here for the following cases, special exception 23008, CPA 23011, CPA 23007, Z 23008, and V 23068. Those are going to be continued, so you're more than welcome to stay for the meeting, but if you're here for those cases, those are going to be continued. Okay, at this time, I would like to have Mr. Clay Irvin come forward, and we got a presentation on the County Council Goals presentation.
Good morning, everybody. Clay Irvin, Director of Growth and Resource Management. Thank you for letting me jump up here early so I can make it to my next meeting. The reason why I'm here is that in May, our County Council held a goal-setting session where they identified specific things that they would like staff to accomplish over the next year. We are still working through many of the recommendations that they had, and specifically, there's 5 goals that were identified in the memo that was provided to you. The first 2 were geared towards efficiency, primarily in the permitting and streamlining of our process, and the other was talking about helping facilitate economic development and those types of things. And then the 5th goal was just making sure that we overall had a positive method of staff assisting anyone coming forward to the county. And so we are going to be working on a series of changes to the zoning ordinance and to the land development regulations that this board will be reviewing. We haven't yet finalized the work schedule or the programming, but we can give you some insights and just wanted to make sure you were aware these were coming forward and where they were coming from. As many of you are aware, we have 5 new council members as of January of this year. They felt it was important for this group to get together, and in May they held this facilitated goal-setting session. And the first 2 goals really kind of focused on what could we do in regards to our own current regulations and procedures to ensure that we're protecting natural resources, doing all of that, as well as making sure those who are coming forward with the development process can do so in the most efficient manner. So we will see that one of the things that has been identified, such as our current list of special exceptions, could some of those be moved as permitted by right or as a conditional use permit, which would require a staff approval rather than coming in front of this board? Does the county council have to approve special exceptions? Could that be something that this board is responsible for so that there would be appeal to the county council? These are some of the questions we're going to be bringing forward and some of the basically recommendations from staff to the county council for their direction. Then ultimately it has to come back to you with the exact language so that way it can follow through Florida statutes or amendments to the zoning and land development regulation. Also, there's operational changes. We've already implemented. Some of these include putting land development and zoning staff over in the building permit area so that way we have basically a one-stop shopping facility over in that location. You've already assisted us with some of the recommendations on the administrative variances and those types of things. So again, this was just basically giving you a quick heads up on those type of changes that will be coming your way. Also, something that's not on your agenda that I need to kind of bring to your attention so you're aware of it. This past legislative session, there was a Senate Bill 250, and it was put together to make sure that cities and counties where natural disasters such as hurricanes were having a uniform method of addressing how to deal with the aftermath of those events. And the good thing is they copied a lot of the stuff that we were already doing. Waiving of building permit fees for recovery, allowing for folks who own a single family home to have an RV or mobile home in their front yard while they have the permits to rebuild their home. Those types of things we were already doing. The legislature, and ultimately the bill was signed into law, also included a provision that if you were within 100 miles of where landfall occurred of Hurricanes Ian or Nicole, you could not make any amendments to your comprehensive plan, your land development regulations, your zoning regulations, or your building code that are more restrictive until October 1, 2024. So what you will see is that we were already working on a program through the Environmental Natural Resource Advisory Committee to do some things such as low impact development, changes to our wetlands, and those types of things. We're still going to be proceeding through with that. We still may have discussion, but the fact is this law says you cannot propose or enact. So therefore, we cannot formally bring these to our county council until October 1, 2024. So as we go forward, just want to make sure you're aware of the procedures and what we're doing and how we're handling it. It does allow for the lessening of standards or the relaxation of standards. So again, some of the changes that we were talking about from our goal setting will be able to continue to proceed, but anything that would be identified as a greater restriction or burden, I believe are the words used in the law, would have to wait until after October 2024. That's really all I had to say today. I thank you for letting me get up here and bend your ear for a few seconds. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin. Any questions?
Yeah, one quick question. So the council wants to have a workshop with us to go over this?
No, sir, not right now. We haven't finalized how this is going to proceed. Right now, the county manager and his office are trying to finalize the budget and get everything passed. After that, we'll be working with the county council to talk about the implementation. That may be part of the actions because, again, it would be good to have both boards being able to speak to each other, talking about some of the changes so that way everyone can clear their thoughts on it, and I'll make sure that it's identified as one of the alternatives.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you all very much. I'll have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin. Okay. All right, we're going to move right into our meeting here, and I'll proceed with if anyone would like to speak for or against any of the cases being heard today, please fill out a form at the back and hand it to Mr. Tucker to my extreme left. We will be limiting you to a 3-minute time limit. After the comments have been heard, I will give the applicant an opportunity to address any concerns the speakers have and answer any questions the commissioners may have. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Soria for legal comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for members of the public and for the applicants that decisions by this body on special exception cases and cases which rezone real property from one classification to another pursuant to the zoning ordinance are recommendations only to the county council and do not constitute a final hearing. So new evidence may be introduced at the county council public hearing. Decisions on variances made by this body constitute final action, subject to an appeal to the county council. And what this means is that no new evidence may be presented at the time of the county council public hearing on the appeal. An aggrieved party that appeals such a decision is confined to the record made before this body. Hearings by this body on rezonings, special exceptions, and variances are quasi-judicial in nature, meaning that this body is acting more like a court and must take into account all oral, written, or demonstrative evidence presented. Their decisions in these cases must be based on competent substantial evidence on the record, and competent substantial evidence has been defined as that evidence a reasonable mind would accept to support a conclusion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Soria. And while on legal comments, I would like to ask the commission to disclose for the record any ex parte communications that have occurred before or during the public hearing at which a vote is to be taken on any quasi-judicial matter. And at this time, I would like to start with Mr. Bender to my extreme right.
None.
None. None.
And I have none. Okay. We do have some items this morning, as I spoke of earlier, that wish to be continued, or with, I think most of them want to be continued. Is that right, Ms. Smith?
Yes, sir. S-23008, the applicant was waiting on a letter of consent from the utility to utilize their property, and so they will be continued until, they've asked to be continued until next month to be heard.
Okay.
CPA 23011, they have retained counsel and they've asked for an additional month to review the case, so they've asked for a continuance till next month. CPA 23007, the applicant did not meet due public notice. And Z23008, the applicant did not meet due public notice. And V23068, the applicant did not meet due public notice.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any discussion on these continuances?
On those last three, they need 30 days or they need further than that?
No, sir. What happened was when they did their due public notice, they missed someone, so they need to go back and do it again, so it will be heard at the next meeting.
So they're, okay, it's continued to August as well?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
So all of these cases are going to be continued to our next meeting?
Mhm.
Yes, sir.
I'll make a motion if you're ready.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a motion that we continue cases S-23008, CPA-23001, CPA-23007, Zebra-23008, Victor-23068, continued until the August meeting. I don't have the exact date.
Second.
Which date is that in August?
August 17th.
And I'll amend that to August 17th, continue to the August 17th meeting.
Amend my second.
Okay, I've got a motion to continue the following cases. S-23008, CPA-23011, CPA-23077, Z-23008, and V-23068 to our next August 17th meeting. The motion comes from Mr. Frank Costa and a second from Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to move right into our new business. So, Ms. Shelley, if you could read in the first case, please.
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-059, a variance to the minimum yard requirements on rural agricultural A2 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. And Ms. Ray, this one is yours.
Good morning, Kristen Ray, Planning and Development Services. The applicant is seeking a variance for a proposed single-family residence. The variance is to reduce the south rear yard from 50 feet to 35.6 feet. This is a legal non-conforming lot. The subject property is only half an acre, and the minimum for an A2 zoning classification is 5 acres. The parcel to the south, which would be the most impacted, is currently undeveloped. The property located approximately 331 feet northwest received a similar variance. Staff's recommendation is for denial as it is a result from the actions of the applicant, as the applicant is proposing the location of the single-family residence. Should the PLDRC find that the applicant has provided competent substantial evidence, the following condition has been provided for consideration: that the variance is limited to the size and location of the structure as shown on the variance site plan. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Any questions for staff?
I do. Yeah, quick question. Did you just say that we had a similar variance in nearby?
Yes, sir. It was about, I think it was 331 feet northwest, and it was approved, I believe, in 2018 or 2019.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for staff? Is the applicant present? Okay, would you like to come forward, sir? Good morning, sir. Could I get your name and address for the record?
Kenneth Ashley, 415 South Wood Avenue, DeLand.
All right, you've heard the staff report this morning. Anything you'd like to add to it?
Yeah, I was just,
If I could get you to speak into the mic, I don't know.
I actually emailed over another survey too of a home that's on a block behind that property on Happy Street. That there's also a house there that's in the same classification A2 that is within 31 feet of the street. So I didn't, I was trying to give references to what we were asking for, show that there's other properties out there that are in this zoning that are within that setback. And then it also, because it's only 140 something feet deep and it's got 250-foot setbacks, it limits the homeowners to be able to have a house that they want to put on that property to like live for the rest of their lives. It's dictating what type of house they can put on there. And in this case, it would be a wide, narrow house, not like, a regular sized house.
All right, sir. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, I do have one public participation form for that case, so I will give you a chance for rebuttal if you'd like to do so. So if you just have a seat up here in the front here, and we'll listen to our next individual. Okay, Miss Melissa Corral, correct? They get your name and address for the record.
Sure, it's Melissa Alman-Korak, 2635 Arter Lane, Orange City. My property abuts to the back of that property, as well as Buddy and Pam Collins, Patty Collins, so they're not here right now, but both of our properties are back to that property. And we don't wish the properties to be closer to ours. We have fences that come along there, and there's right now a green space that protects our property between the two of those. We have 2.5 acres or 3 acres each, and all the properties in that area are supposed to be, that amount of property. That's how we bought them, and that's how we want them to stay. And I think most of the properties in that area are that amount of acreage, and we wanted them to kind of stay that way and maintain our space from our neighbors. So that's where we want to maintain that, variance from our neighbors. That's all I had to say. We don't want people developing right up against our fence and stuff like that, so.
Okay. Any questions for the speaker?
Just want to get a clarification. The picture that's up on the screen,
Mhm.
so you're either lot 10 or lot 11, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thank you. We don't have any other forms for public participation, or we do?
The gentleman is going to be filling out a form. He didn't see them when he first
Okay.
came in.
If I could get you to come on forward, and then you can fill out the form after you've spoken. Morning,
Hi,
sir.
my name's Derek Cobb. I represent Buddy and Patty Collins. They actually own,
And could I get your address, sir?
my address
Mhm.
is 1601 Bluegrass Boulevard in
Okay,
DeLand, but their address is 2625 Arter Lane.
okay,
They actually own lot 10 and 11, and then the other side of a street that doesn't exist on the map, 625 Arter Lane. And they just want to go on the record as not agreeing with this either.
okay. Any question for the speaker?
Your disagreement with the variance is based on,
It would encroach, if they pushed that house back further, it would encroach onto their lot 10 and 11. Adjacent, it touches their property right there.
correct?
Yes, sir.
You're still looking at a 35-foot buffer between the property line to the house.
Right.
It's not pushing onto the property line.
No. I'm not saying it's on the property line. I'm saying it's pushing back towards it.
Right,
It's already supposed to be
Okay.
50.
which is 35, and I'm assuming that lot's heavily wooded as well?
Yes, sir. It's actually landlocked. So not sure how he's,
Can we go back to the site plan, please?
I have the survey for lot 10 and 11 if you'd like to see it.
I don't need it. I don't have any use for it now. Okay. I just was curious on your, why you were opposed to it, that's all. No, thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone else that'd like to speak to this case? Okay, is the applicant still, could I get you to come back forward? What is your ingress and egress to the property?
I'm a builder, homeowner, potential homeowner.
Can you speak?
I'm a builder, working with the homeowners.
That was
But what is the right of way to get in and out of the?
It's on McMillan Street, or McMillan Drive.
Okay.
And if you look, there's also a property that's in the front right, or front left corner of their property.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a smaller lot next door to it. And I'm not saying what's on the surrounding areas of that property. It's, it definitely looks like more agricultural, but on the McMillan side road going down there, it looks like that the properties are all broken up, even on the block before. That it just makes it hard. And if the people build next door to McMillan, 296 McMillan Drive, which they already actually started building a house a long time ago and then they abandoned it, it's that size of a house doesn't even seem like it fits in an A2 zone. It's like an agricultural zone. So, I mean, I can't, determine what area gets zoned, what zoning, but it just doesn't seem like fair to,
All right, sir.
If I may.
Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah,
Costa.
I have a question for you. So what would prevent you from moving the house forward towards McMillan Drive?
Actually, nothing, just surveys. My original request was to only split that number in half and split the difference from the front into the back, so we could actually push the home forward if we're allowed to. That would be nice too.
You gotta meet the setback to the front.
What's the front setback?
It's 50 feet.
Also 50? So the house right now, is at the front of the house, is that 50 foot? Is that what I'm looking at? I can barely see it on this. Okay, yeah, I see that from the edge of the far left corner. So either the variance is on the front end or the variance is on the back side.
Yeah, or both. If we could split the difference, it would only be like 6-7 feet on both sides, which is still, that would leave 40 something feet.
So if you centered the house on the lot, you'd only be, the variance would be about 7 foot on the back and 7 foot on the front,
Yeah.
as opposed to,
Which to me is
Yeah.
minimal. And if they have a fence, if those people were to ever build over there
Mhm.
and they put a a 6-foot tall fence back there, that could be a lot of separation as far as privacy. For they wouldn't have any, interactions with owners if they didn't want to be, neighboring owners.
Property owner, they wouldn't have any objection, and we've got to clear this with legal first, but to moving the house forward.
No, that wouldn't be a
They
problem at
wouldn't
all.
have any objection to that? Okay.
No.
All right, then I guess my next question is for Mr. Paulo, because it has been public.
Yes, that's the issue. So right now, what's been noticed is a variance to the rear setback of the
That's what I thought.
property. You cannot grant a variance to the front setback. You can modify the rear setback. So if they want to balance the property, they would have to re-advertise and come back.
Okay, I guess that answers my question. All right, sir. Thank you. Do you have any more questions for Ms.?
No.
Okay. All right, do we have any, we have already, okay, we're going to close the floor for public participation and open it up for commission discussion. You can have a seat, sir. Thank you.
We're closed.
Was there a reason, Ms. Smith, that I guess, or Ms. Ray, that they didn't, they just didn't want to request 2 variances? Is that what was the discussion when it was brought to you?
The discussion was just for the rear yard because the front yard met the setback. So this was a site plan that they submitted and this was their proposal.
Okay. It looks to me like this is a non-conforming lot for the zoning.
Yep.
Okay.
It's only a half acre.
And we run into this.
I have a question for staff real quick. So we've, in fact, they balanced the site, in other words, centered the house. What would be the variances for the front and the back? What would be that actual number that they would need to come back for? I can't tell the dimensions on here off this screen here.
I'm not sure that we can give you an exact number right now because there is a septic tank there they'll need to consider as well.
But it's not in place, correct? That's not an existing septic.
Oh, okay.
That's a new construction, so that septic can be moved left, right.
Yeah, we typically leave it to the applicant to recommend what they would like to see. We don't
No, I
set
understand that. I understand. I'm just trying to figure out what that number is that we're looking, what's that potential number?
If you split the difference, it'd be about 7.5 feet because you got 50 on the front, which you have a 50-foot setback, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then you got a 50-foot setback on the rear.
Mm-hmm.
And right now we're looking at 35. So what he's requesting is
What's the overall width of that lot, though?
about 15 feet, a little less than 15 feet. So you'd split the difference there, that'd be 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
7.5 feet to make them come back and reapply is
Well, my question would be if and I know the floor is closed, but if that's something that the neighbors would support rather than wasting their time.
if you'd like, we can I can request them to come back up to get
If you don't mind, yeah.
one or both.
Either or both. If they both want to speak, I'd be fine with that.
Speak to the lady that, can I get you to come back forward, ma'am? I apologize for you. Ms. Korak, is that right? Okay. You've heard our discussion here about would the 7.5 feet make any difference?
I mean, I think my question too is that if this is approved, is this going to set a precedence for other people to be able to come in and develop smaller lots that are less than the acreage that's already zoned in other neighborhoods, in our neighborhood for the 2.5 acres everywhere, and like developers be able to come in and develop in smaller lots?
Okay. Okay.
If we agree to this, we don't want to like,
I see what you're saying. Okay.
right.
This is it.
I think what it is they're objecting to the development.
I understand that, but this is a legal non-conforming lot, so it is buildable. It's not that it cannot be built. It's a legal non-conforming. That's what's in here.
So even though it's smaller, it's able to be built on?
Yeah, at some point in the process, it got chopped up years ago, and it
Okay.
is a half-acre lot, and it's a buildable half-acre lot. So my question is, if these folks came back with a variance and instead of asking to reduce it from 50 to 35, if we only reduced it to, what, 43, right, on the backside, so it's a 7-foot,
Yeah.
the variance is maybe for 7 feet total, that would center the house and give you more space, another almost 10 feet, 15 feet on the backside. Would you be supportive of that, or are you just not supportive of it at all?
I mean, I'd be less unhappy, let's put it that way.
You'd be,
So,
okay,
I'm
would
sorry.
would you be more happier than you are now with this particular scenario?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, ma'am. Okay, I don't know if it's for the 7.5 feet or whether it's worth requiring them to go back through it. They've went through this portion, we'd have to reschedule, and they'd have to it's just,
Well, either way, we can't pass it at this point. I'm just looking at giving them something to look forward to down the road, rather than, because if we deny this, do they have to sit out for a year?
2 years,
2 years, if we deny this year?
2 years.
I believe it's 1 year for this specific request.
So,
Wow.
I'm wrong.
I think you can waive that 1-year provision. You have the authority to do that, but generally, if you deny something and they do not appeal, or even if you approve something, they can't come back for an entire year for that same variance request.
Well, I want to shut them down for a year. That's my problem.
I guess one of the questions I have too, Ms. Smith, is that if this was a standard residential lot of this size, the setback would only be 25 feet to the rear. Is that correct? What's the rear setback on a regular half-acre residential lot? Let's say it wasn't Zone A agriculture.
Well, the setbacks depend upon what the zoning is. So you're asking me a lot this
R1.
size.
R1.
Let me look it up. I don't have that one on the top of my head.
That's, I think, what we're looking at. We're looking at a non-conforming lot. It's only a half acre in size.
And it is part of an approved subdivision.
Okay. And I believe the regular residential setback R1 would be 25 feet. Is that correct? What I'm doing is making a comparison of what it would be in a regular situation. And then I don't think we're asking for more than what, or they're asking for more than what it would normally be implied.
Rear yard is 20 feet, sir.
20 feet. Okay. Well, I don't want to put the people to go back through all that again for 7 feet, so where I'm at. And if it was a standard lot, it would only be 20 feet on R1. And I realize this is agriculture, but it's a legal non-conforming lot.
Correct.
It's buildable.
Correct. And we have no power at this point to amend this as it is. It's either accept it.
No, you can amend the rear setback, so you can make it greater. Like you don't have to grant a 35-foot rear setback. You can grant 40, for example.
Correct, but now they have a problem on the front side, so they have to come for a second variance. So we're not killing them for a year, we're just killing them for about a couple months.
So what you're doing is if you imagine a box, like you can only modify one side of the box, and then they have to fit their house in that box somewhere. You're not determining, the layout of the house or the specific design. You're just determining what the outer boundary is. And right now, based on our notice, it's how big is that rear setback going to be? So that's within the jurisdiction of this board currently, is you can modify the rear setback. You can't touch any of the other setbacks.
Got it.
I see where you're going with Mr. Costa on this,
Yep.
but then they'd have to reapply for another variance. They'd
Correct.
Go through the process again.
But it's not going to be a year.
They'd have to pay, but they'd have to do the public notices, paying the reapplication and all that for a front variance.
And it will cost them almost $1,000 extra.
Mr. Chair. Bob,
Yes, sir.
Staff, what if there was, this item was continued into next month, and that would give them an opportunity to think about it, come back without going through the expense of paying those things?
Is that an option?
Yes, if what you're doing is you're essentially continuing the item to the next commissioner meeting. Notice is preserved. You are stuck with the same kind of bounds, so you can only talk about the rear setback, but you're just delaying your decision, so giving the applicant time to, consider the discussion before you make a final determination.
Okay, so they couldn't amend this application that they have in place. It's still only for the rear setback, even with the continuance.
Yes, because you're preserving the notice, you're preserving the application, you're just delaying your final decision.
To me, I'm ready to move forward on it. I just don't see what the 7.5 feet is going to make a difference. I mean, a normal R1 property is only 20 feet. This is 35.6, 35.8.
No, I understand. I'm not in disagreement with the variance, to be honest with you.
I think the problem here is with the opposition is
Yes.
they didn't want it to be developed at all because of being in an agricultural
Yes.
community, and which I understand.
Yes.
I totally understand. But it is a legal non-conforming lot, and it is buildable. So they will be building on it some shape or form.
Can you put up page 9 of 15 that's got the aerial of the subject property? No, the one that's got the two pictures side by side, there's larger, or top and bottom pictures. I think it's page 9 of the packet. And then after that, I'm prepared to make a motion after I make this point.
Okay.
Okay, you don't have ability to zoom in at all, correct? A little bit? All right, so if you see that, that's the footprint of the lot. McMillan Drive is the front of the house, that site plan. So even at 35 foot, if you see the amount of tree coverage there, you've got a pretty large tree buffer in between the houses behind it, behind the rear of the house. If it was a clear-cut lot, I think I would have more of a concern from encroaching into their backyard, but with that much tree coverage that's there and the tree preservation requirements, the buffer is going to be pretty substantial at 35 feet. And with only a half-acre lot, the ability to go and put any kind of pole barns and things like that are actually limited once you put the house on site as far as overall coverage. So with that, unless somebody else has got a comment, I'm prepared to make a motion.
I'm prepared to listen to it.
I would make a motion that on case V-23059, make a motion to approve with the staff recommended conditions.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve variance V-23059 with the one staff, is it one staff recommended condition? One condition from staff, from Mr. Frank Costa, and a second from Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Shelley, could I get the next case, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-062, variances to the minimum yard requirements on urban single-family residential R3 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Ms. Ray, this one is also yours.
Good morning. So the applicant is seeking two variances. Variance 1 is to reduce the waterfront yard from 25 feet to 4 feet, and variance 2 is to reduce the south front yard from 50 feet to 24.21 feet. This is to replace an already existing carport. Staff's recommendation was for approval. The property is irregular shaped in between the curve of East New York Avenue and Lake Williamset. There is a thoroughfare overlay zone on the property that increases the front yard setback. to 50 feet with the waterfront yard of 25 feet, which would limit the applicant's buildable area. And they are building in the same footprint of the already existing carport that was built back in 1959. Should the PLDRC find that the applicants have provided competent substantial evidence, the following conditions have been provided. Variances 1 and 2 are limited to the size and location as shown on the variant site plan. And a wetland alteration permit is required for any impacts to the wetland buffer. And I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant present here today? Okay. All right. Do we have any public participation? Okay, we're going to close the floor for public participation and open up for commission discussion.
I'll be glad to make a motion.
Mr. Patterson, you had a...
Go ahead.
Since this is almost in my neighborhood,
Okay.
I've been by that property many times every day when I drive home, so I don't have any problems with this, Mr. Chair, and so I'd like to make a motion to approve variance request 1 and 2 on case number V-23-062.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Patterson.
Staff conditions.
And I get a second. And what the,
Two staff conditions.
and with the staff
Recommendations.
recommendations?
Two staff
Yeah.
recommendations, yes.
Okay. All right. I've got a motion to approve variance V-23-062 from, and with the 2 staff recommended conditions from Mr. Patterson and the second for Mr. Sixman. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Right, see, these people have a hard time getting out of their house.
Yeah.
That's a hard turn to get out of.
Yeah, it's right on a curve.
Okay, Ms. Shelley, could I get the next case, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-064, a variance to the minimum yard requirements on prime agriculture A1 and resource corridor RC zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. And this is Ms. Ray also.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning again. The applicant is seeking 1 variance to reduce the west front yard from 100 feet to 60 feet for an existing single-family residence. Staff's recommendation is for approval, as the property does have a 50-foot right-of-way easement along all 4 sides of the property, creating 4 front yards. The existing single-family residence is not the result of the applicant, as the applicant purchased the property with it already existing, and she has applied for an after-the-fact building permit to bring the structure into compliance. This is the minimum variance necessary to obtain that after-the-fact building permit. And should the PLDRC find that applicants have provided competent substantial evidence, the following condition has been provided: that the variance is limited to the location of the structure as shown on the variant site plan. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Any questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant present? Could I get you to come forward, please? If I could get your name and address for the record.
Yes, it's Val DeLon, and my address is 4666 Fir Road, F-I-R Road.
All right, you've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to it?
I would just like to ask you to approve this variance because I bought this house in 2021, and the structure, the house was already on the lot, and I found out that there was no permits, so I filed an application for the to the building department for the permits, and just going through all the steps, and I believe that we met all the steps with the structure and stuff. It was nicely built, and but now we came up to this obstacle of the what is it called? Setbacks requirements. So apparently there is an easement on the west side, and it's 50 feet wide. But the easement, one thing, it's heavily treated. There is wetlands in the back of it. and there is a fence all along that easement, so it's not a working valuable easement. So I'm just asking you to approve this variance to let me have this permit.
Okay, so the structure was there when you bought the property?
Yes,
Correct.
yes,
Okay.
it was already there. People
Okay.
already.
All right, any questions for the applicant?
How far into the permitting process are you?
We already did all this. This is the very last step.
This is the last step?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. We do have one public participation form. I may call you back up for rebuttal. We'll see what this is all about, okay? All right, I've got a Ms. or Joseph Voglis. Okay. Okay. Can I get your name and address for the record, sir?
First name Joseph, last name Voglis. We are currently at 139 North Corey Drive in Edgewater, but own the property adjacent to Val.
Okay. You'd like to comment on the case?
What my wife and I are here to determine, because we are neither opposed nor accepting of the proposal. What we are lacking is an understanding of the impact that approval of this motion would mean to us, the property on which we share, and any.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
The whole easement.
This is the first time we've even seen.
Could I get your name too, ma'am? Could you?
Mary Beth Douglas
Okay,
and 139 North Corey Drive.
okay. You, basically what this is for the existing structure. You just make it conforming. Am I correct in saying that, Ms. Ray? And do we have any recommendations to the location? Yeah, and it's, the variance only addresses the location and the structure as it is shown and predicted in this application form here. So pretty much, nothing's going to change in what you see. And if anything was ever to be over and above that, and they were to encroach into their setbacks, they would have to come back and ask for another variance.
Okay, again, this was for us more informational than it was anything else.
Yeah, we weren't sure. I mean, I looked at the thing and it looks, is it on our portion of the property or?
No, it's just setback.
It's an attempt to allow them to do what they need to do on their property.
Legitimize the building.
Normally in the setback for this zoning would be 100 feet. And right now the structure is only 60 feet. And all they're doing, like Mr. Costa said, is legitimizing the fact of the structure where it is at this point.
That answers our questions, and it's kind of you to take the.
Okay, thank you.
Problem.
Right. Do we have anyone else that'd like to speak to this case?
No, sir.
Okay. We're going to close the floor for public participation, open up for commission discussion or a motion.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead, Mr. Sixman.
I make a motion for approval, case V23064 with the one staff recommendation.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve variance V23064 with the staff recommendation or condition, and a second from Mr. Patterson. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Sunday I wandered out there in the woods, and that is an interesting. It was about 2.3 miles off of State Road 44, and if I'd been in my truck, I could have gone all the way down Fur Road, but because I had my wife's car, I would have needed an airboat to get me out of there because there was a lot of rain there on.
Yeah.
So, but good luck.
Okay. Ms. Shelley, can I get the next case, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-065, variances to the minimum yard requirements on rural agricultural estate RA zoned property.
Ms. Ray.
Good morning. So the applicant is seeking two variances. The first variance is to reduce the west front yard from 45 feet to 18.6 feet. And the second one is to reduce the south side yard from 25 feet to 17.6 feet. This is for a proposed single-family residence. The staff's recommendation is for denial, as the property meets the minimum lot size requirements and it's a standard square-shaped lot. There was an approved building permit with the home facing the southwest corner. However, during construction, the single-family residence was shifted to be parallel with the west property, causing the single-family residence to encroach to the setbacks. However, should the PLDRC find that the applicants have provided competent substantial evidence, the following condition has been provided. Variances 1 and 2 are limited to the size and to the location of the structure as shown on the variance site plan. And I'm available for any questions. Oh, I apologize. And there was one letter of support that was submitted.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ray. Any questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant present? Would you like to come forward, please? Good morning. Could I get your name and address for the record?
Yes. Good morning. My name is Hilly Griffith, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant Charles Ayers. The address is 2431 Lake Street, Deltona, Florida.
Okay, you've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes. We would like to request you to reconsider the recommendation to deny on the following criteria based on the applicable zoning ordinance. So the first being that special conditions do exist on the property that are peculiar to this land. Here, the special conditions are that first, the property slopes to the northeast. I would like to present, we received a letter from the engineer regarding the home position, and I would like to read it into the record. He said, "To whom it may concern, having reviewed the survey, it can be confirmed that based on the existing grades shown, the southwest corner of the subject lot, which is located at the center of the cul-de-sac, has the highest elevation at 44.39. At the requested home location, a distance of 79.5 feet from the southwest property corner, the pre-developed spot elevation under the home was 40.38. The northeast property corner is shown at the elevation of 34.12. The benefits of locating a single-family residence in the location include the following: decrease the runoff volume, flow rate, velocity flowing past the residence, therefore reducing the potential for erosion of the foundation. 2, allow more runoff to percolate into the ground, reducing nutrient discharge from the site. 3, allow the location of the septic system further away from the northeast property corner and potential off-site wetlands. And 4, reduce the impervious area of the extended driveway. That's the first special condition. The second, with that, the homeowners kept the home, if the homeowners kept the home as it was originally approved, it would have been turned at a 45-degree angle. As stated, they have changed it to be parallel to the street. The applicants believe this would result in an awkward look if it was at the 45-degree angle. The house across the street is also parallel to the street, and it gives it better curb appeal. Third, if the home was parallel to the street and pushed back to the setback, this would affect the trees and other vegetation on the property. So although it could be built as initially approved, it would not be positioned at the higher point of the property. It would not be as aesthetically pleasing. The second criteria is that special conditions and circumstance do not result from the actions of the applicant. While we agree the applicant shifted where the site plan was initially approved, the change in position was because of the pre-existing conditions of the sloping property and the home across the street with the neighbor. The third criteria is that the interpretations would deprive the applicant of the rights commonly enjoyed and other properties in the same zoning and create undue hardship. Here we agree with the staff recommendation that it would cause undue hardship. We also believe that it would deprive the applicant of the ability to mirror the other homes on the street while also being at the higher point, which would be the safer point of the house. I would also like to mention that when the site plan was changed, they believed that they were within the setback requirements. When reading the code, lot line front is the property line abutting any street right-of-way, and right-of-way is an easement or a dedicated strip of land occupied to be the street, crosswalk, railroad. Here, there exists no property line that is abutting the right-of-way unless you just imagine the property line to be at the edge of the easement. The property line is in the middle of the private easement. Thus, the code was somewhat confusing, and therefore we request some leniency in the reading of the code. Fourth, the variance granted is the minimum variance required. Here, this is all the property owners would need to build the home while accomplishing the most harmonious look with the neighborhood and also positioning it at the highest point on the property. And fifth, the grant of the variance will be in harmony with the general intent of the ordinance and will not be injurious to the area. Here we agree with the staff recommendation that the variance will not be injurious to the area and would like to take this a step further by referencing the letter from the neighbor in support of approving the variance. This neighbor was located at 2421 Lake Street, Deltona, Florida. Approving the variance would harm no one. It would improve the curb appeal of the area. It would be the safest place for the home, and it would be consistent with the look of the community. As such, I respectfully request the commission reconsider their recommendation to deny.
Okay. Now, for as far as your letter from the engineer, if you'd like that to be put in the record, if you want to give that to Ms. Tucker to my immediate left, and you will not be getting it back. It becomes part of the record. Thank you, ma'am. Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Costa?
Yes, if you don't mind clarifying again, who are you?
I'm Hillary Griffith. I'm the attorney that is representing Charles Ayer, who is the applicant.
Okay, so you're an attorney representing the applicant.
Yes, sir.
All right, so my next question is this then. Once they came in for a revision to their permit, they had already poured the stem wall?
Yes, the stem wall
So
foundation.
the slab was already in place, stem wall was in place, underground work was done, and then they came in for for a permit revision rather than prior to?
I believe so. I believe they thought that the site plan, as they were pouring it, was still within the
Are
requirement.
they owner builders or they hired a contractor?
They hired a contractor.
So the contractor should have known better than to pour without getting a revision after the fact. Secondly, with regards to your comment about the height of the house that the engineer made, if it's a stem wall, you're already going to meet FFE regardless. You're going to build it up to that level, regardless of whether the property slopes or does not slope. So I take that out. My problem is that, not so much with the variance, because you have support. My problem is that the contractor knows better than to do what he did. And now here you are in front of us and taking their time and their money and our time and effort to approve something that never should have been here to begin with. Because this easily could have been done at the very beginning of the process, not after it was built. So those are just my comments on that one.
I understand that. Thank you.
Any other comments
Yeah,
or questions? Mr. Bender?
I'm in agreement with Mr. Costa because all of the things that you pointed out as to why the changes were made, it's not like the land changed when they were down here getting permits between the time they got the permit and the time that they built and stuff. All of these things were in place, and so if they knew that they needed to come down here and get permits, why didn't they come back and say, this is not working, bring the letter from the engineer and say, these are the problems that we're having, and see about getting those changes? That's where I'm having difficulty with proving this. All of these things were there. They didn't just occur after the house was, after they got out. Oh, we better not build here. Let's go build over here. Well, if you knew the exercise was done for a purpose, and if the county issued permits, and then everybody that got that permit has the right to go out and say, well, we don't necessarily like that, let's change it. That's where I'm having a lot of difficulty with that.
Yeah, I understand that. I hear you. I think one of the biggest problems here was that there was confusion as to where the building setbacks were measured from. Here. The original was, we looked at the building setback line definition, lot line definition, right-of-way definition, and we believed it to be from either the property line or the road line. And as you can see here, the easement is much further extended than where the road actually is. So there was some confusion as to how far back these setbacks needed to be.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Pardon me? Okay. All right, let's see if we have any public participation. If we do, I'll give you a chance for rebuttal. Do we have any public participation? Okay, we're going to close the floor for public participation of that. Open it up for commission discussion. And Mr. Costa, you had a question for staff.
Yeah, I'm looking through the packet here. Is there a reason that we don't have a site plan of the before and the after? The site plan that was approved and then the site plan with the revision in our packet?
I need to apologize to you, Paolo, and I were just having that same conversation, and it was omitted, so we apologize.
Flipping through all the pages going, all right, it's got to be in here somewhere, but it's not. Okay. So initially, because that would have been just a visual to see how it was laid out previously and what it looks like now.
Actually, Ms. Griffith, do you have the original site plan? Can you submit that to, so that they can view it? And also make it part of the record as well.
And the other question for staff as well is, when they came in for the revision, was that because they failed an inspection? Because the house was not per the permit?
Yes, sir.
That was a root cause? Okay.
So there were original variances on this site plan?
That's the house, all right. That's the original permit or original site plan that was submitted? There we go. Thank you. So in this particular picture then, it met all of the setbacks, correct?
Don't you have 2 front yard setbacks on this, on the original one?
This went through our permitting process, and it was approved by our zoning staff. They
As
said it
as
met.
we're looking at it right here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and it required no variances, obviously.
That's correct.
All right.
It should have, though. Should it have not?
It's technically a corner lot. They would have to meet 40 feet from wherever the easement is.
Mhm.
So the cul-de-sac as well as the approach road of Lake Street.
I guess my question would be, is the way it was originally, it was impacting the setback greater
Mm-hmm.
than what the,
That's what I'm seeing here as
yeah.
well.
So,
There we go. That looks better. 45 and sides are 25. Can you scoot that up on the screen a little bit? Towards the top of the screen? A little more? Okay. So it says minimum setbacks are 45 on the 2 front yards. And if I'm reading these arrows correctly, because it's kind of fuzzy, that meant it looks like 45 feet on one. At 45, exactly 45 on both? Okay. That was within the setback layout. According to the minimum requirements, I'm looking at the red sticker or the red stamp on the left. So what they did was they rotated it clockwise so that the driveway now faces directly to the street rather than the cul-de-sac. Is that right? And that caused them the now.
oh, I see what.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Instead of coming in from the cul-de-sac side, they're coming in from the
Right,
flat side of the
okay.
street.
So it did encroach
Yep.
greater
And that
this way.
caused
to
the
the
encroachment. Right. Yeah, my heartburn is that the builder alone should have known enough to come forward prior to, once they laid it out, laid out the stem wall and decided that they were going to turn the house, they probably should have come forward at that point in time. And there is one letter of support in here, so that kind of gives some weight to this. And there's nobody opposing that I can see, so. I hate to make them tear it all down, but,
But now that they've got the house turned, does that become a side yard or is that still a front yard setback?
No, it's still a front yard, so they would still have two front yards. They can easily meet, because of the way they turned it, they are meeting the 45 from the approach of Lake.
Right.
yeah, this is a rural property. 2.5 acres.
It's kind of hard to,
Yeah.
it's actually difficult to tell. It's still, because of, you've got that cul-de-sac at the end. So the garage would have to be 45 from both the cul-de-sac area and from the lake approach. You are granting a, 18.6 for the approach area as a minimum. So I think that if you approved it now, they would be fine, because the minimum setback to that side is 18.6.
Okay.
Good. All right. Any other discussion? What's our thought process going on here? I realize.
I wish the builder was here.
Yeah. I had to give him a little earful.
He did not want to be here.
No. I don't blame him.
Well, it looks to me like they'd had to come before a variance regardless.
Yeah.
If whatever they did. Except leaving it as it was.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Yeah. Okay.
I make a motion that on case V-23065, we approve variances 1 and 2 with the staff recommended conditions.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion from Mr. Costa to approve variance V-23065 of the two staff variances 1 and 2. Staff recommended conditions from Mr. Costa and a second from Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-1 with Mr. Bender in dissent. All right. Ms. Shelley, can I get the next case read into the record, please?
Yes, sir. Case number V-23-067, variances to the minimum yard requirements on urban single-family residential R3 zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. And Mr. Hanson, this is yours.
Good morning, Michael Hanson, Planning Development Service. This particular variance case, comes to us as a result of a code violation. The applicants constructed an elevated wooden deck and a pergola in approximately 2021 and without obtaining building permits. The variances before you are in an attempt so that they are able to get the permits approved to rectify those code violations. Variance 1 deals with the deck in its relation to the waterfront setback. As you can see on the site plan there, the way the water wraps around the property is kind of a unique fashion, and it ends up having a 3.75 foot distance from the closest point of the deck to the interior side of the seawall on the property. At the same time, looking at the site plan, the pergola, which is on top of the elevated deck, measures 4.75 feet from the interior side of the seawall. In review of the criteria for granting said variances, staff determined that they meet one of the 5, so we are recommending denial. We do have a condition that if the variances are approved, they're limited to size and location as depicted on the site plan. We noted, however, that there's not really a unique special circumstance or condition, and that the design of it was based on the applicant, though we did take consideration into the fact that the deck and pergola would be screened from passersby and traffic from the right-of-way, and that existing vegetation along the property would partially screen the view of the pergola and deck from neighboring properties. I'm available for any questions the board may have.
Is this a result of you said co-violation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Anybody else have questions for staff?
Yes, did environmental give any comments on their feelings about this?
From my understanding with environmental, when they did the review on it, they took a look and they also were opening up an environmental violation due to wetland mitigation in the area, but not pertaining to the actual variance request.
So they need this variance request to move forward and then deal with environmental, is that correct?
That's correct.
So just to clarify, environmental is requesting a wetlands alteration permit because there was work done there.
After the variance is approved, or if the variance is approved.
Correct.
Any other questions for staff? Is the applicant present?
Hello.
Good morning, sir. Could I get your name and address for the record, please?
I'm Lee Ferguson, property owner. My wife, Carol Ferguson.
Okay, that's at 422
4222 South Peninsula Drive.
All right, sir. You've heard the staff report. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Sure. I've got a couple of pictures. I don't know if she can put them up there. Or...
Yeah, you can give them to Miss Tucker to my immediate left, and she'll put them up there, but it becomes part of the record and you will not get them back.
That's fine. Yes, we built the pergola. I think it was actually 2022. It's basically a wood structure, and the reason that we did it was because the elevation of the seawall from the elevation of the house is about 3.5 feet. Our house, the setbacks for this are supposed to be 25 feet, where our house is 18 feet, and which was grandfathered in because it was built in 1984, I guess, and from 18 feet to 19 feet because it's not parallel with the seawall itself. So we're seeking a variance so that we can keep it, but it also gives us a little bit of protection from wave action. We have had a couple of hurricanes in the last few years, and in 2017 we actually had waves hitting the doors in the back. But as you can see, there's a little bit of protection, about a 1 foot, actually about 2 foot right there. So when the waves come over, we figure that kind of gives us some help. So pick one kind of shows that, and then if you'll look at picture number 2, the house to the north of us, 2 houses down with a pool in the back. I mean, brand new pool, looks great, but that is, that's a pool deck, and that's an impervious, concrete's impervious, whereas our deck is pervious, and it's roughly the same distance from the water. So that's one thing that I was thinking of. And we have no neighbors that have a problem with this. nobody can really see it, unless you're in a boat in the water. But there's no obstruction for anybody, but no one has voiced a problem with us. As a matter of fact, one of the neighbors across the street, when he got his certified letter, he came over and walked in, and I wasn't there, but Carol was there. He knocks on the door, and it was actually the son of the lady that lived there, because she's elderly. But Carol took him in the backyard, and he goes, "They have a problem with this?" I mean, we think it's aesthetically pleasing to the house. We think it goes with the nature of the house. So the only thing that we're having a problem with are the setbacks themselves. And if you look at picture number 3, that is the next door neighbor to the south. And you can see that their porch, I guess you can see it, is in line with ours all the way down. So they don't have any problem with it. So we're just asking to have a variance to allow us to keep the structure.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Oh,
Ms.
and
Shelley?
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
one other thing. We do have elderly parents. One of them is on a walker. And with that drop coming out of the back, if we have to tear this thing down, it's a little bit of a safety hazard for our elderly parent. It's only 18 feet from the house to the inside of the seawall. And so you're losing 3.5 feet in elevation. So it's just not, the backyard's useless without it, to be honest with you. So
I do have a question.
And Ms. Shelley?
I just have a comment. I'm thinking, I don't know that any of us would have a problem. The problem is you didn't come in and get your permits.
that is a
If
problem.
you'd have done that first.
Yeah,
Yes,
but
so that's all I'm saying,
Yeah.
just for the record. And when you're pointing out the pool, they got their permits.
Yeah,
So,
and
thank you.
I
That's all.
realize that. I
That's all.
realize that.
Otherwise, I don't, no one would
Ms.
have a problem.
Bender?
I don't have to say anything.
Mr. Costa?
So this was built in 21, obviously, without a permit, to parrot what they said. Any idea why it took this long to get a code violation?
You know what? I think the code violation has been going on for a long time, because I had to go get as-built drawings. I had to get it engineered. I had to get a new survey. It took forever to get a new survey, because the survey that I had was over 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
It was right at 3. I think
So it didn't show the pergola.
No,
the
so
attachment.
so it just took time to get through that process,
Mhm.
and so here we are.
So you were notified then earlier this year or last
Oh,
year?
there's a guy, his name's Fred Eastwood. He drives around. I didn't know it at the time, but he tries to find anybody that's doing something, pulling out a toilet or whatever, and he red tags the heck out of it, which I get it, but that's, so he saw somebody, in the back putting this on, I think.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Okay, we're going to see if you have any public participation. If we don't, we're going to close the floor. If we do, I'll give you a chance for rebuttal, okay?
Okay.
Tucker, do we have anybody? We don't have anyone, so we're going to close the floor for public participation and open up for commission discussion or motion.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead, Mr. Six.
I will make a motion for approval for case B23067 with the one staff recommendation.
Okay,
Second.
I've got a motion from Mr. Sixsmith to approve variance V23067 with the one staff condition, and a second from Mr. Costa. Any discussion on the motion?
Just real quick, in the event this gets torn down by a hurricane, is this, the 75% rule apply here automatically? Or
For these variances, no, because for the pergola and the deck, they're good. If the house is a non-conforming structure, then the house is, if it's 75%, or if they're in a coastal high hazard area, it's 50%, that if they sustain that amount of damage, they would have to comply with current standards. What you are doing is you are approving the pergola and the deck. So they can put the deck and the pergola back, but the house may need to be moved back.
Okay, that's what I'm asking, so, all right, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Ms. Shelley, could I get the next case, please?
Case number V-23-063, variances to reduce the minimum landscape buffer requirements and increase the maximum yard requirements on Osteen Mixed-Use Village OMV zoned property.
If
Thank
it
you.
pleases the commission, the next item is associated with this one, so if you read them both into the record, we can talk about both of them.
Yeah.
Yes,
All right,
ma'am.
let's
Be
go
glad
ahead and
to.
do that. Okay.
Item number S-23-004, a special exception for a car wash on Osteen Mixed-Use Village OMV zoned property.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. And Ms. Smith, this is you.
Yes, sir. I will start with the variance, because if you don't approve the variance, then they will not meet the special exception criteria. So this is an application for a car wash, and the case following it will be for a special exception for a car wash. We're presenting the variance first, again, because if you don't approve it, we can't approve the special exception. The applicant is building a car wash, and the drive aisle extends slightly into the landscape buffer. Variance 1 is a request to reduce the landscape buffer from 25 feet to 15.5 feet for approximately 90 feet along State Road 415. The second variance is specific to the Osteen local plan. This is unique in that they have maximum front yards instead of minimum front yards. And the point of it is to create an interrelationship between the street and the property. It's for a pedestrian-friendly walkability concept. It applies more to retail, restaurants, and shopping. It really doesn't apply to a car wash. The applicant's requesting to increase the maximum front yard from 30 feet to 45 feet for the building. While both variances don't meet all 5 criteria, because the site could potentially be developed to meet the landscape and setback requirements, we do recognize that a car wash is unique. It's a unique use that needs to be designed to encourage the movement and stacking of vehicles entering and exiting the car wash structure. The property itself is constrained by 4 rights-of-way and a lake that requires a 25-foot wetland buffer, and the applicant is attempting to minimize both variances while trying to stay out of the 100-year floodplain. And the applicant is present and I believe would like to speak on this item as well. So I can run real quick through the special exception now.
Okay.
Again, they're looking for an automated car wash on State Road 415 in Osteen. The parcel's in the Osteen local plan. And the plan is based on the principles of walkability, pedestrian access, and new urbanism. The zoning is Osteen Mixed-Use Village, which allows for commercial and residential uses. The future land use is Mixed-Use Village. We talked about the movements that are necessary for stacking of vehicles entering and exiting, and this definitely does not fit neatly into a neo-traditional box of pedestrian access. The site's 2.34 acres in size, and it's constrained by the rights-of-way in the lake. The applicant wants to build a 5,250 square foot building with 3 drive aisles, 35 vehicle cleaning stations, and 4 parking spaces. It will be open 7 days a week, and with approval of the previous variances, they can meet the special exception criteria except for one local plan requirement. Osteen Policy 1.5.3 states that access to State Road 415 will be limited by requiring the use of frontage or rear roads, cross-access agreements, shared parking, and other methods as deemed appropriate. This presents a bit of a quagmire because all of the other options for entering and exiting the property are closed rights-of-way, unopened rights-of-way, I'm sorry, and they all exit directly onto 415. So because there are 2 access points to SR 14, we do need to say that they don't meet the local plan requirement and recommend denial. But if the PLDRC finds that the applicant meets the special exception criteria, we have provided 6 conditions for you to consider. And again, the applicant is present to answer questions as well.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Any questions for staff?
Yes, where's the closest signalized intersection to this?
Could you please put the map up, Kelly?
Is it up at Howland?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So for some reason, I thought this was closer to Howland than it is. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant present? Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, Nika Hosseini with the law firm of Cobb Cole, 231 North Woodland Boulevard in DeLand. This is a fun one. I haven't really dealt with something like this before. It's really interesting in that there's a lot of history to it. So this was previously platted. It was subdivided to a great extent with lots of rights of ways running through it, both internally and, as Trish mentioned, externally as well. So at some point it was combined again back into one parcel. However, we still have these kind of old paper rights of way that surround it. We do have the lake as well, and we actually have what I believe is, because of Norma, a 50-foot buffer that encroaches into a property line that we have to make sure we avoid. So it's interesting. We have we have enhanced landscape buffers because of those paper rights of ways, and then of course off of 415 we have enhanced buffers as well. So what's really unique about this site is, as Trish mentioned, and really appreciate her help on this, we've been kind of going back and forth for an extended period of time trying to figure out engineering wise how we can make this fit without asking for too much or trying to veer away from the Osteen local plan, since we know that is important and we do want to meet those requirements. So one thing to note is that obviously there are code provisions regarding stacking. And so we tried to kind of, flip the building parallel to State Road 415. If we did that, we would have to have additional driveway into the buffer, and we didn't want to do that. We wanted to make sure that from 415 it presents well and there's enough of a buffer. So right now we have about a 25-foot buffer, except for one small area, which is really just for a turning radius of cars. Other than that, we preserve that. Another interesting fact about this, as Trish mentioned, is it doesn't have a minimum setback. It has a maximum setback. So you have to be only 30 feet from the roadway, which is difficult because it requires a 25-foot landscape buffer. So you only have 5 feet to work with, and 5 feet isn't enough to put a driveway for a car. And so that's what we've been trying to work with. We've had, so many iterations of this plan to see what works the best and what makes the most sense for this area. And so with that, we are requesting, we'll start with the variances, two variances. One, to be able to simply kind of push the car wash back by 15 feet so that we don't hurt too much of the landscape buffer, which essentially goes into our other variance. They're both connected, to only allow that one portion really just for turning radius of cars to encroach into that landscape buffer. So those are the two variances. What's interesting here is that this is a special exception in our zoning category. So it's a special exception in that as long as you meet the criteria, you're good. It becomes permitted by right. However, because it has this overlay, it's in the Osteen local plan, there's a number of additional requirements that are imposed. Those requirements, even though this is a special exception, were never really thought of when the special exception use was put in the code. So they don't fully match up, and there are some inconsistencies. This is kind of what Clay mentioned earlier, a great example of something that, maybe in the future will need to be modified to be put into the permitted use category rather than a special exception. Just one of those interesting instances that it wasn't looked at from every perspective. So with that, with respect to the variances, we do request respectfully that you approve both of these variances in order for us to be able to move forward and discuss the special exception.
Thank you, Ms. Husseini. Any questions? Yeah.
You got it pretty well packed in there.
I try to speak fast.
Okay. We do have one public participation form, and I'll give you a chance for rebuttal.
I do have one quick question.
Go ahead.
I know that thing's sitting right on the lake. What's the drainage procedure?
I do have our esteemed engineer, Chris Rowley, here because I'm not very good at engineering questions. So I'll let him answer that.
I was just wondering how it was set up.
Yeah, Chris Rowley, Zevcone Associates, 300 Interchange Boulevard, Ormond Beach. What was exactly your question?
Just being so close to that lake, how's the drainage system set up for, I know there's a lot of water goes through these things.
Yeah, so Oh, for the car wash itself, it's
Yeah,
actually a reuse
for the car wash
system.
itself.
Yeah, so it's a reuse system. I believe it's 85% reuse was. So
Okay.
So they'll be reusing most of the water. And then as far as drainage, we'll just be treating everything on site as normal with underground exfiltration, most likely, because it is very tight, and then dry ponds.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Okay, we do have one public participation forum from Miss, or David and Marguerite, Terwilliger. I knew I'd mess it up.
Good morning, David Terwilliger. I live at 4020 Chickasaw Drive in Sanford, Florida. And our interest is, we're just to the south of them. So we have the lots 1 through 24 that are just to the south, and we also border the 10th Avenue. And we don't have any objection to the commercial development going in. Our concern is that, and I'm speaking on behalf of my wife and her sister who own the property. We just want to make sure that it doesn't impact our ability to do the same thing, come in with a commercial development, which it would comply with it, with this. And I'm not sure if the driveway is on their property or if that driveway is adjacent to the, are we set back from the 10th Avenue right away that we both share, which is really not of any use to the county. If you look on the plat, it goes right towards the lake. So the only thing that I would think is if we coordinated with them for a driveway access, because I'm just looking at how many driveways are going to be trying to go along 415. We have 360 feet of frontage. So we'd be trying to access our property too, if we come in for a development. And we're looking at possible commercial development too.
I will say that each case that comes before us is a standalone case, so just because one goes through doesn't necessarily mean the next one will go through.
Correct, but I'm just wondering how many driveways would be allowed for this. I mean, if it would impact our ability to get a driveway, then we would be opposed.
Ms. Smith, do you want to answer that question?
Yes, both of the driveways are on their property. The rights of way surround their properties. Those are county platted rights of way, so they don't belong to that applicant or to you unless they're vacated, and then they would work to split them. So they're asking for the 2 driveway cuts. They will need to go to DOT because that's a state road, so that's how they'll get their permits, and you would need to do the same. They went through several iterations of in land development to make sure that they could make this parcel buildable, and you may need to do that as well. It looks like you have several small parcels that may need to be combined.
Yes,
And
I don't think that the county would want us to try to develop as the way the county currently has it platted.
That's correct. So if they get an approval here today, that's not the end of it for them. At first, it goes to county council for approval, and if they get that approval, they come back to our land development group and have to work out all the site engineering, and it will all have to be on their property. The drainage system will need to be designed to keep everything on their property, but it will be specific to their site. It will not be on your site.
Yeah, well, the only question and concern we would have is would it impact our ability to get a driveway access because they have theirs so close to ours.
That's a question for DOT.
Okay, but the county would not have an objection to it then.
It's a state road. DOT determines the driveway access to their roads.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other public participation for this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Ms. Husseini, would you like for rebuttal or?
Just a note, really, as Trish said, it is a state road, and so what you, kind of going to the special exception, but I know you read those together, so I'll just note that this is the concept plan, right? A special exception is just to allow a use as long as that use meets certain conditions. So, of course, you have to provide some kind of a plan to show what you're going to do. But this exact concept may change because we're going to have to go through engineering, county, DOT, the full process. And so, as long as we're fitting within the bounds of the variances and the requirements of the code, this plan may change. We might end up having only one cut through. Right now, we have a, one way in and one way out. And so all of those things, based on what DOT says, if they come back and say, hey, we're only going to allow you to do X, Y, and Z, that's what we're required to do. And so, as you see it here, it might not look exactly the same once we get through engineering, depending on what DOT and the county requires with respect to stormwater, other engineering requirements, and of course, access to the state road. And so, whether it's this or another property, they're going to have to go through that same process in order to get it. And so I'll leave it at that. But essentially, it's just a concept plan, and we're just here for a special exception to allow the use, not the engineering.
Are you familiar with the number one condition staff has put on this?
Yes.
You have no problem with
We
that?
agree with all conditions.
Okay. Any question, Mr. Bender?
Variance 1 concerns me. I don't necessarily like the 9 feet into that buffer area. And I see where that 100-year floodplain is, that's behind where the building is going to be, where you enter. And you're going to have to do, you already enter that area. Would it be possible to consider moving that building back those 9 feet to stay out of that buffer area just in case? I mean, because who knows what's going to happen down there. The DOT is going to have to come through at some point and improve that. If they come in and have to affect that 9 feet turn radius, they basically shut that entire facility down. Because now you can't make that, you're saying you can't make the turn coming out of
Your code is stacking. You have to have a certain amount of stacking where cars can essentially sit for a car wash. And so if we push it back, one, we're increasing our other variance, which we're trying to limit. And two, we're impacting our stacking. And so again, because of the configuration of the site, we've done so many iterations of trying to, it's one domino falls and then the rest fall. And so we're trying to keep as many dominoes up as possible. And so with that, if you move it back, you're increasing one variance and then you're impacting the stacking. And so we're trying to stay, so we've pushed it up to stay as far away from the lake and the wetlands as possible, which brings everything kind of down a little bit. We're also trying to allow for enough stacking as required by our code, which pushes everything, kind of elongates everything a bit more. We have a max setback, a minimum max setback, so we're trying to kind of move it to where we can. So again, it's a very constrained site. We've tried best that we can to move it back. It doesn't work for stacking purposes. And so based on our engineers and based on the turnaround radius that we need, that's what we've discovered. Now, to your other point regarding the 100-year floodplain, this is flood zone A, so it is not a determined floodplain quite yet. There are obviously, images of what it may be. We are going to have to run an analysis on what the floodplain actually is, what the base flood elevation actually is, and our goal at engineering will be to just fully stay out of the floodplain because it's going to cost us a lot more money to try to build something within a floodplain. So again, it's just conceptual. So we're going to do our best to stay out of the floodplain. We're going to want to stay out of the floodplain. The county is going to press us to stay out of the floodplain, so that won't be too much of an issue. But in order to do that, we're still going to have to ask for that variance.
I just to let you know, I'm going to be hard pressed to support that with variance 1.
And that's fine. Again, we've already had our engineers push it back and try to look. So,
Do you by chance know what the right of way is on 415?
sorry.
The width of the right of way on 415?
The right of way width?
The width, yes, that the state currently has.
It varies. You know. I'm not sure we have that answer
They've got room for
off the bat.
expansion, that's all.
We haven't heard, so we went through 2 iterations of staff review. We had traffic provide comments to us. We haven't heard any comments regarding necessitating additional right-of-way to expand 415. So at this point, we don't know. We haven't heard anything from the county or from the state, but if we do, we're going to have to modify our concept.
Mr. Bender, I'm sorry, I just wanted to add on to your comments from earlier. This project has been in-house for quite some time. We didn't want to schedule it for this meeting until we could work through a lot of these issues. This has been through our technical staff 2 to 3 times with additional contact with each of our engineers to try to find the best way to do this. And this did appear to be acceptable to most of the people who were involved, all the engineers and the stormwater people. And that's how we got to this point to bring this forward. So it has been seen multiple times by the people in the county. I just wanted to let you know that.
What about, has there been any contact with the DOT and what their thoughts would be on that?
We always include DOT in our technical review. If they have comments, they typically reply. I do not see any comments from them in the staff comments, which are included in your report.
So they have seen it?
Yes, sir.
Can you explain one other thing while I'm talking?
Yeah.
Can you help me out within the staff recommendations on page 8, number 3? It says proposed egress driveway shall be designed to prevent traffic from entering by turning right or exiting left.
So I need to clarify one other thing because you're reading the older staff report. We redistributed the staff report by email 2 days ago, and you have a hard copy on your desk. And that condition was removed because it's an engineering condition, and that will be addressed during the engineering phase.
Yeah, so I couldn't make it. Well, wait a minute now. If I can't turn right coming from Osteen, then that don't make any sense because it seems like that's how you're gonna get in. So, okay.
Yeah, we had some engineering comments bleed through, but spoke with Trish and we fixed it up for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anybody else to speak to it? Okay, we're going to close the floor for public participation and open up for commission discussion or motion.
I'm prepared to make a motion. We're going to do these separately, correct?
Yes, variance first.
Separate, do the variance first.
The variances first, and we got 2 variances. Do you want me to do those separate as well?
Please.
Okay. All right, so I'll make a motion on case V-23-063, variance number 1. I make a motion to approve with staff recommended conditions. And I make a second motion on case V-23-063 on variance number 2 to approve with staff recommended conditions.
Second.
Yeah, I got a motion from Mr. Costa to approve variance V-23-063, variance 1 with staff recommendations. And then I also have let's take that one first.
Yep.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion carries 5-1 with Mr. Bender in dissent. I also have a motion to approve variance V-23-063 with variance 2 with the staff recommended conditions from Mr. Costa and a second from Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Mr. Costa, I'll take a motion on this.
Make a motion on case S-23004 that we forward the special exception case to the county council for a final action with a recommendation of approval with staff recommended conditions.
Second.
I've got a motion to forward the special exception case S-23-004 to the county council for final action with recommendation of approval with the 1 staff recommendation.
Quite a bit. There's like
there's
8 of them or 6
Oh,
or 8 of
I'm
them.
sorry. How many?
6.
With the 6 conditions from staff. Mr. Costa and a second for Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on the motion?
Can we get a confirmation on that? How many conditions are there on that case? Because there's 2 reports floating around out here.
There are 6 conditions.
6 conditions.
Six
Okay.
conditions. Okay. For the 6 conditions, all those, any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 5-1 with Mr. Bender in dissent.
Thank you all for your time. I just did want to thank your staff as well for all their hard work on this. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Okay, Ms. Shelley, can I get the next case, please?
Yes, sir. Case number PUD-23-005, rezoning from the prime agriculture A1 and resource corridor RC zoning classifications to planned unit development with a business subclassification and RC zoning classifications.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. And this will be Mr. Sham.
Hi, good morning. Steve Shams with Planning Development Services. The case is a rezoning from A1 and RC to a PUD with RC. The site is approximately 65.33 acres, and it's located at the intersection of Pioneer Trail and Tomoka Farms Road. The site has an approved special exception for 400 temporary campsites and RV sites before, during, and after special events in Volusia, such as Speed Weeks, Bike Weeks, and Biketober events. The current special exception expires on October 31st, 2028. Outside of these special event periods, the site currently operates as an agricultural site. The applicant is seeking a PUD rezoning to continue the use in perpetuity, expand capacity of the temporary sites or campsites from 400 to 1,000, and to keep temporary structures and vehicles on site in between events such as Speed Week and Bike Week. The site has been utilized as a campground for race events since 2001. Initially, in the first special exception approval, there was 100 sites, but that has increased over the years. In 2004, it increased to 250. In 2010, it increased to 300. And in 2018, it increased to 400. There was also a rezoning in 2014 to allow outdoor events, and an approved final site plan was submitted in 2021. The applicant is proposing 604 temporary campsites and 394 RV hookup sites. The RV hookup sites include electrical hookups. Due to the proposed significant increase of capacity by 600 sites, we believe the site is transitioning to a primary commercial use. The site does not have potable water or sanitary sewer services. During special events, the applicant provides portable restrooms and hand washing stations. We had this project reviewed by our fire emergency unit and also the city of Port Orange. Both found that the applicant would be required to provide potable water on site for guest consumption and as a means to provide fire protection. According to the site plan provided by the applicant, temporary campsites are proposed to be located within the resource corridor zoned area, which includes wetlands. The applicant is working with the St. Johns River Water Management District to restore wetlands to previous locations, but this has not yet occurred. In addition, a wetland restoration plan was not submitted to the county, so the plan was assessed with the current RC location. The traffic analysis submitted analyzed peak hour traffic at a 90% capacity scenario. During the AM peak hour, there was an average of 168 trips, and during the PM peak hour, there was an average of 181 trips. The analysis did not demonstrate how the roadway network will accommodate the additional trips, and our traffic engineering group reviewed the project and requested a full traffic impact analysis during the final site plan phase. Overall, the staff recommends denial as the request is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan transitions the site to a commercial use from an agricultural use, develops inside of the RC areas, and results in significant traffic impacts. We also recommended 8 staff conditions should the PLDRC approve this project, and they are located on pages 11 and 12 of the staff report. I'm available for comment or questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shames. Any questions for staff?
So this PUD is for operation year-round or just operations during special events only?
So it's still only during special events, but it increases the capacity allowed and allows them to store things on site.
All right, and my second question is regarding the traffic. So your traffic counter, traffic comments here are based on the additional campsites, correct?
Yes, sir.
So those campers are never leaving for the 2-week duration that they're there. And the amount of traffic generated is typically not the campers, but the participants of Bike Week and Race Week. So I don't see the correlation between that and the campsites personally on the traffic count. Outside of that, my other question is number 7, that you also recommending denial because it's going to affect the value of the other properties around it, surrounding it. So this is in my backyard. This is at the blinking light. There's nothing else around it other than basically more of the same. It's basically either agricultural, very rural. So I don't see how they would be affected negatively by this particular process. I have some other questions, but I'm going to reserve until after I hear from the applicant.
Okay, any other questions for staff? Okay, is the applicant present? Good morning, Mr. Elkine. If you'll get your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. Good morning, everyone. My name is Darren Elkine. My professional address is 142 East New York Avenue in DeLand. It's my pleasure to be here before you this morning. I will start this by saying this is one of those things that when someone mentioned the idea of doing a PD, it sounds simple and obvious, and like so many other projects, especially when I've tried to repair something with a set of tools, it seems simple when I get started, and it turns into much more than I anticipated. So let me take you through just a little bit of history. As you know, this is operated as a campground, and that whole area, I don't go camping for Bike Week, and in fact, try to avoid the crowds, but as part of this, I've driven through the intersection a few times while the festivities were ongoing, and it is extremely busy. I would certainly avoid coming down the Pioneer Trail during that time if I were heading from home to the office. The campgrounds have grown over time. The size of the operation there has grown over time, and quite frankly, when they got the special exception for 400 site, there was code enforcement action taken after the site plan was approved because they had more. They had people setting up tents, and it was more than the 400 that was allowed. It just was, and it grew just sort of organically. They came into compliance. They've made every improvement that county staff asked them to make with the site plan back in 2020. That involved some construction. They gave some right of way to the county. Didn't give it, sold it, but at a very reasonable price. And so they've worked well with the county, and I've appreciated staff's input. But as a result of getting them into compliance with everything, and the last couple of operations have been great, no problems. One issue that we had, and it's referenced in the report, is especially between Speed Week and Bike Week in February and March, sometimes because you have to take it down 3 days after, and you can set up 3 days before. The time frame, I think this year was like 5 days, but in between there. So you've got to remove a bunch of stuff and then put it all back a few days later. And so the idea, in talking with some folks at county staff, was, well, let's do a PD because we don't think we can add that as a condition to a special exception. So let's do a PD so that it's an agricultural piece of property. They hide it behind trees. Nobody would even notice it's there unless you went on the property. Just some, tables, portalettes, a trailer with things inside of it, just to leave it there year round, because the cows aren't going to bother it when they're grazing the most part of the year. And so that was the genesis for all this, and we were kind of going along thinking it was, you know, working pretty well. And one of the things that we did was say, well, let's add primitive, just no more RVs, no more electric hookups, nothing of that nature, but just spaces for primitive camp tents, basically, on the western area. And we got sort of to the 11th hour of this thing and realized staff was recommending it. And we were a little surprised by that. I'm not, you know, arguing about that. They let us know about it. It's been a nice collaborative process, and you know, Steve in particular has been great and done a great job with working through us with the process, helping us along. So we thank you for that. With that background, I want to give you a couple of things. We do not propose to have any camping in the ES area. Now, currently we have ESC on the property. Prior to the time that my client bought the property, there was work done that altered, grading work that altered wetlands, whether it was ponds to have cows drink water out of or what it was. There were alterations that were made to the wetland. My client's consultant, environmental consultant, has gotten with St. John's, and they have agreed to, and that's reflected in this map that's before you, they have agreed to where the wetlands should be historically based upon looking at the historical maps and aerials. And ultimately, we'll have a restoration plan with St. John's. They'll have to do that whether this PD goes through or not. And once we do that, then we can come to the county and get an administrative line amendment for the ESC area. This map reflects the area, the wetland areas that have been agreed to, if you will, with St. John's. So that's the dashed lines in those two areas. And those aren't wet ponds per se. You can see the two ponds that were actually dug that are there. And then the white concentric line around the dashed areas is what would be the required county buffer around a wetland area. When I say wetlands, they don't, you know, most of it, other than to the southwest, are not, you know, wetlands, but they are technically wet. So we don't propose any primitive camping in there, and he'll do it, any condition that you want, do a good job to fence it or otherwise to keep people out of there, not a problem. That hasn't happened yet, and so we would certainly think that a condition of this plan development was that no site plan can be approved until the ESC line is adjusted. Just wanted to make that clear. There is, as Member Costa pointed out, there's camping during special events to the east, to the southeast. I think immediately to the, even on the southwest side of that intersection, there's a small amount of camping or parking at least that goes on. So it's just what that area does. I don't think as a practical matter, anybody's going to notice the difference in how, you know, the additional for those number of, you know, few days out of the year. The 1,000 was not a magic number. That wasn't an engineered number. I don't know if there's a number that makes sense for the county, but they would certainly like the ability to meet the demand that they have with the additional tent camping. These are folks that are primarily visiting the county for bike week and race weeks. You know, I haven't seen an economic study to how much somebody that's, you know, staying in a tent spends versus somebody in an RV spends versus somebody in a hotel spends. But I assume if they're traveling here and visiting, they're, you know, they're participating in the, you know, remember, Casa, you said they don't leave, but I know they come here and they spend money, and I think that's a good thing, and it's very temporary. One of the things that this fundamentally does, obviously, the owner of the property is asking to do this because he'll make more money and be able to meet the demand that he has if he's allowed to expand. And there's certainly a convenience in being able to leave his things there between the events. The rest of the year, the cows are grazing. It's kind of funny to have to go and send a few folks out to pick up the cow droppings before the tents and all the campers can come in. So it operates as a pasture the rest of the year. The thing that it does allow, though, there is, as we all know, there is intense pressure on landowners to sell their land, to be able to develop the land. I understand this is in the Osteen area with the land use protections that are in place, but there's intense pressure, and allowing the property owner the ability to earn the additional income just, during these few days a year certainly relieves some of that pressure that is in place for, rural landowners to not out there, and nobody wants that more than the property owner. He's got a liability problem if somebody gets hurt. So we want people to be safe. They want to enjoy it safely. I know that some of the activities that take place, an article in the paper this morning at the temporary campground sites especially during Bike Week. Not my cup of tea, but I know some people don't like those activities or those types of activities, but they're constitutionally entitled to engage in. Thank you. Anything further?
Yep. I got a couple questions for you if you're completed.
Go ahead.
All right, first off, to your last comment, those who are offended by what goes on there should not go out then.
I agree with that.
That's the reason I don't go to church, because sometimes I'm offended by what's being said at the pulpit. Secondly, PUD. I'm looking by the amount of people in this room opposing it. I don't see anybody. Which is, I find ironic, because this is actually inside the Samsula overlay. Mm-hmm. And they have always fought tooth and nail about commercializing any property up along that interlay. So there's nobody here opposing this. My question is this: with this PUD, number one, does that eliminate, because it's a business class PUD, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Does that eliminate now your ability to continue to get ag exemption by having the cows grazing on that property?
My very short answer to your question is I don't know.
Okay.
I have certainly discussed that matter with my client, and he's handling that. I'm not a tax law expert.
Right.
And so he's got that front and center, and if that turns out to be a problem, they may abandon this whole
Yeah, as a property owner, that would be my first concern. Okay.
Because they're not generating enough income from this, and
Right.
it doesn't happen enough.
Understood. And then us also on the development agreement. So with this PUD, the development agreement is not proposing any permanent structures on site.
That is correct.
Correct? Everything is temporary tents, other than the structures that the items that he's leaving behind, which are the trailers and the porta potties, those kind of things.
Yeah.
But there is no permanent structures being constructed on this site underneath this PUD, is there?
That is correct. You are correct.
Okay. So no permanent buildings, no lean-to barns, no structures of any type.
I believe he can do some structures under his ag classification. There's an existing non-resident.
As ag, but if he's going to a BPUD, that ag classification goes away, does it not?
The ag classification is independent. That's the property appraiser. That's
Okay.
not us.
All right.
I want to be I don't want to say anything that's wrong. And by that, I'm saying
Sure.
I don't want to mislead you. I want to give you an accurate answer. They have currently out there a trailer that is like a shower trailer.
Yeah, I see it every day.
Yeah.
I know.
And the PD asked that stay there. And one of the things he has said is, it's if I got to haul that thing in and out, that's going to just destroy that thing. I'd rather just let it sit there. So we have identified an area on the plan that this is like storage, if you will.
I understood. What I'm talking about is a permanently built structure. In other words, that trailer becomes all of a sudden now it's a brick and mortar structure with walk-in showers and toilets and.
You are correct. There's absolutely no plan for that, and in today's construction costs, that would
All right.
be a question anyway.
I don't see any letters of opposition. I also don't see any letters of support. I know there's not a neighborhood meeting here because you're pretty much isolated. Your neighbors are another similar venue across the street and a cow pasture on the other side and an empty lot on the two opposing corners. Have you had any kind of kickback or feedback on this at all?
I have not. My client has told me that, folks have either heard to or talked to other neighbors. I don't know whether they're opposed to it or against it, but they knew about it. Mm-hmm. So I can't represent to you. I personally have not.
My final question is also, so this.
Can I, Mr. Costa?
Yeah.
So I can, we obviously, I know you know this, but I'll say it anyways. We send out a letter. It's got my contact information. I don't do a lot of private party rezonings,
Sure, no, I get
but
it.
I get a response occasionally, or at least a question. I got nothing.
This PUD basically allows them to kind of legitimize what they've been doing and what they want to continue to do in the future. It also hopefully, because I know that they are also subject of constant code violations, visited by the code enforcement and fire and building during the events. And so this would help them avoid all of that?
No, sir.
No.
The two things I want to take issue with the constant code. They had code problems with, and I want to say that I helped. And we spent a lot of time on it. They are fully in compliant. The last two events, no code issues, and we had an agreement with the county council. Here's exactly what they're going to do. County staff was great about facilitating the events. Everybody was on the same sheet of music. I think I was just a facilitator for doing it. And he towed the line. It was great. And I personally went out there and took pictures on my phone to make, not during the event, but right as he was getting ready for it, just to make sure, since I was involved with it. So I just want to, he's not constantly having code enforcement problems. That's over and done. Fire, the health department comes out and has to come out. He still has to act like a special exception in terms of each of the events. He has to have, I forget who exactly comes out. I know the health department comes out and checks that they have the correct number of portalettes, and there's some other things they check. I can't tell you what. Correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I'm sure the fire department comes out and checks. I know those two agencies still come out. Those and any other agencies that currently come out as part of the special exceptions, temporary campground processes they do with all of them, will continue to do.
So there's really two separate issues here. The PUD legitimizes the campsites themselves and the storage of the materials thereafter.
Yes.
And the special exception deals with the events that occur during those times of the year.
If this were rezoned to PD, the special exception then would go away. We wouldn't need the special exception. However, a condition of the PD, and if you've asked me that and I can't quite remember without looking, but if it's not in there, we need to put it in there, still requires them to do all of the same things that the special exception requires, vis-a-vis having fire come out, health department come out, providing the things, and then there's some other things that staff says, if you're going to approve this, add these other things.
I wanted to make sure it wasn't just carte blanche. Hey, here you go, you get PUD now, go for it.
So, you got it.
Good. I'm comfortable.
Unless they tell me that I've got that wrong. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a couple of comments. Okay. Is asked for perpetuity, and I'm, as Mr. Costa brought up, and I'm looking as I'm reading through here, that this is now going to be primarily commercial purposes.
I disagree with you.
Well,
that's a statement is in there, yes.
The statement is in here, yes. And going to Mr. Costa's point, and as a taxpayer in Volusia County, I have, if you're going as in perpetuity, I have some issues with what the tax consequences will be on this, one way or the other. Also, is this the same property owner from February of 2022?
Yes.
It has not changed hands. So
that is
noting again the things that were done on the property, constructed buildings on site with no permits or inspections, and additional asphalt milling. I mean, you did mention that, and constructed outside the scope and all of that. So there is at least a bit of someone not complying. I'm just going through what's in my report here, and just so when the vote comes in, and I just, anyway.
Can I respond, Michelle?
Of course you can respond. I was looking for some other things. I had some other comments in here. No,
I'll shut
but
up.
go ahead. I don't see them off the top of my head where I'd marked different things in the
So
report.
I don't want to split hairs here, but it's an ag zone piece of property, and they build, they've got, they store hay and other things
Sure,
out there.
I
and
totally
tools, and they have-
understand.
So there's not a building out there in that got built, like somebody goes and builds a house without a
Right.
permit.
I
It's
totally
nothing like
understand
that.
as well.
And they have some things, they had I don't want to call them, not an RV, but like it's a mobile home. It's almost like a mobile home, but a trailer of that nature, like a temporary office. And, you know, at some point, the inspector, years ago, not in 2022, came out and said that needs to be strapped down, so they strapped it down. So this is not somebody building.
I understand all that.
I just want to make a point. The way that's written in the staff report, I'm not so sure I understand what they're talking about, building structures without permits. I see that happen. It's obnoxious when people do it. That's not what happened here. So I just want to clarify.
I didn't take it that it, but my point was doing things without having the permits that they needed to do whatever those things were.
I don't believe there's a structure out there that got built.
I don't know that there is
requires-
either. That's my point. I'm not about the structures. I'm just saying there were things done without permits in general, whatever that was.
I don't,
Okay.
again, there were, he clearly, no question about it, in terms of the camping, had too many campsites and left the stuff longer than he was supposed to leave it.
Sure, so
That's
that
what
could
he
have been
did.
the permits. I don't know.
Yeah, when we talk about building
I don't wanna-
structures.
It's not about the building structures. That's not an issue for me. I go by that property a lot myself, so I haven't noticed any apartments going up. But again, but I look at that and having lots of people around have ag zoned property that and I say good for them, that are allowed to remain with the ag zone property because of the limited time that these things are done on those properties. So of course their tax burden is a lot lower than it is for other things. And my concern, I'm just saying it for the record, is that it now becomes, as opposed to people I know that have ag properties and they're used much more sparingly for commercial purposes, and they do make a great bit of money when that's done, and I have nothing against that. But in this regard, it tends to become primarily agricultural, and that's all I'm saying.
I think, Ms. Shelley, you meant to say it becomes primarily commercial.
Commercial, excuse me. Thank you.
I will respectfully disagree with you for this reason. It will have camping the exact same number of days a year as it has
understand.
for decades, and the other folks with ag exemptions have camping the same number of days. It will allow someone to store things on site, which in an ag operation, forget about camping. If they were just having the cows out there or some other ag operation, they could store all kinds of things out there and all year long. And so I think it keeps this, if it looks like an if you believe that it's an agricultural operation today, primarily with camping during special events, that's what it will continue to be. Whether the property appraiser says because you've technically done it through a PD versus a special exception and the property appraiser knows the difference between the two, then the property appraiser may take that tax exemption away and they may then elect not to do the PD. Which is the concern. But I don't, this characterization that staff has given it, and these, I love these people, so don't take this the wrong way. Reasonable people can disagree. I don't think this transforms it into a commercial operation. More importantly, as a resident of this community, I also pay a lot of taxes. I think, and as I drove through Orange City, which I hadn't done in a while, yesterday in the afternoon, and the amount of growth. We used to ride motorcycles. And you know, this is something that helps to allow a property owner to get income without having to give in to the pressure of.
I understand that as well.
nonprofit.
Thank you.
So, thank you so
It's just the
much.
expansion of the size too. That's really what's getting me from the 400 to 1,000.
And if there's a better number, I'm okay.
It's just a number.
Another question for
Thank
Mr. Alcott.
Yeah, let me get Mr. Mr. Bender, go ahead.
I'm good.
I'm kind of on the same wavelength with Ms. Shelley. I think that it's not going to be so agricultural, differing with you in that light, because when you go from 400 to 1,000, if he's charging for those sites, each one of those sites generate $1,000 for a year.
He wished, but
and it's very possible because I've been affiliated with a business that does this, managing member for LLC that does this for the last 22 years. So that is significant revenue increase. And for him to be able to be allowed to maintain an agricultural exemption with that and it not being an agricultural use would be criminal, in my opinion. The rest of the citizens.
I just want to make it clear that the county doesn't determine the agricultural classification. So staff's concerns are, you have the Samsula local plan, you have the surrounding area, and that the staff's concern is the request transitions it from an agricultural and primarily agricultural use, which is kind of encouraged. And
Yeah, that's not here today. That's neither here nor there. I do have a question for staff, though. And what was that question for staff? I wrote down. Oh, this isn't on, the flashing light. The intersection?
Mhm.
You know where I am? Am I at the right intersection?
Blinking light, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
415 in Pioneer.
Yes, I mean, because I went out and looked at it. But are there any, probably not, but there have been multiple fatalities, and it has nothing to do, okay. But I look at having more people there. In fact, a dear friend of mine was, or not a dear friend, but a friend that I knew, bicycle has been hit. He died at that. There's been multiple things happening there. And then again, during this time only, not all the time, but during these special events, there will be increased traffic in that area with people coming and going. I mean, it's just a natural that will occur. And again, this does not have to do with, I'm just thinking of the future. If something, has anyone, no discussions on that with DOT or whoever's in charge, or the state, or, okay.
Oh.
Just curious.
Mr. Costa, do you have a question?
No, there's an answer.
You got an answer for
She
that?
was going to say.
Okay, go ahead.
Steve provided the traffic calculations to you.
Yeah, I saw that in here.
And that's what we would go by.
But that's all, okay.
I can, Ms. Shelley, if I may, respond to that. It's, first off, at that location, if you go through during special event, which you wouldn't unless you were checking it out or going to it, the times that I've been, the busy times, it's traffic jam at that intersection. And so everything's moving slowly, and there are police officers or troopers all over the area controlling traffic, so they don't rely on people at that intersection. The other thing is that there is a plan for, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but a plan for a roundabout, a full improvement there. And I don't know if it's going to happen or
Well,
not.
I'm fighting it tooth and nail, so
Okay.
I don't want it there.
I agree.
Yeah. I know my client has been contacted about.
I don't want it there for multiple reasons, but that's neither here nor there.
either.
So.
I didn't even bring that up for discussion. I was just curious for myself.
Yeah, I think
That's all.
from a.
I shouldn't have brought it up.
My client
actually.
makes more. Will
We're good.
Anyways, yeah.
So I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Hopefully the final question. So I just want to clarify a couple things. Currently, he operates how many campsites?
There 400.
400 with hookups or 400 total?
They are allowed, per the special exception, to have 396 hookups and 4 campsites. In the past, staff has, and I'm not necessarily these folks, but staff has said, you can have 400 if you want to have only 200 RVs and 200 tents. That's fine. I'm not sure the exact number of actual hookups that are there. He's not planning to expand it, and I apologize, I'd have to look. I think it's less than 396.
Okay, so let's assume that there's 396 there now, and I'm looking at the picture that's on the screen. So the milling roadways that are shown up there, I think, is an accurate representation of what currently exists? The infrastructure that you see to the top right of the screen?
Yes, more or
Okay.
less.
So that is basically where the hookups are, if I recall, from being on site.
I don't
Primarily.
believe, they're primarily, I believe, in the center section, but
Okay. So the extra 600 sites that you guys are talking about to get to the 1,000 is the bubbled area that we've got around the pond, which are basically primitive campsite.
They are
There are no
primitive.
hookups. It's just tent camping.
Absolutely, 100%.
So we're not adding additional RV hookups and motorhomes and et cetera. These are the guys that are coming in tents that you can see from the road, because they could crawl right up to the edge of the fence and pitch a tent, which I don't know how they sleep at night, but maybe they don't.
That's the idea.
So my point of the matter is the jump from 400 to 1,000 is really, it's not an impact to the property, because they're primitive sites, not.
Yes, you are
physical
100%
sites.
correct. There are no more hookups.
I
no
just
more
wanted
RVs.
I wanted to clarify that was accurate statement. Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
I tell you, I was actually shocked until got my pack last week that this wasn't a B PUD already. I thought it was already a B PUD.
Okay.
It's gone through multiple special exceptions, and those special exceptions, they're not as, I won't say permanent as a PUD. They do time out, so it's had to be renewed. Special exception is subject to a revocation procedure. So, you know, if someone got out of line and violated all those conditions, we can, you know, find the person in violation and revoke the special exception.
Mr. Bender, you had a question?
And my preference in this would be to see it stay as a special exception so that it doesn't take the county's ability away to eliminate problems if they occur. Now, looking at history, each time that the special exception came up for renewal, there was an increase in the number of units. We went from 100 to 250, then to 300, 400, now we're at 1,000. And if they said, we're not going to put any more pads in now, we're not asking, as soon as it's approved, do they then have the ability to come back and say, okay, well, we want to put in some more hookups now? So that's my concern, is every time we do it, increasing, what kind of controls is being put on that?
That's, if I can.
Go ahead, Mr. Oak.
That, Mr. Bender, that's an excellent thought that I haven't had, and as Paulo, you know, mentioned the idea of the special exception versus the PD. I'm going to take that to heart, regardless of what you all do here as it goes forward, and think about how to incorporate something along those lines into the PD. I'm going to need to noodle on it, but
That was going to get into my line right here, is that because we're moving out of the special exception and going into the PUD, what we're doing is creating the perpetuity in order to, so you don't have to renew. And that's the whole purpose of it, and from what I'm seeing. And my point is that we're increasing the size along with it. We're 400 by more than doubling the size. And I'm not saying that the PUD is not the way to go, but is there a mechanism in the PUD that could come up for review within a certain amount of time where you would normally do a renewal on the special exception and do a review on the PUD to see if it still stands or not?
So a couple of things, and that was Mr. Bender's point as well, I think. The idea, and quite frankly, it wasn't my or my client's idea to do the PD. It was really a way to keep stuff out there. And then we said, well, if we're going through all of this and the expense of a PD, let's add some additional primitive sites in the places where it's not going to be PSC. And then, and now you've brought up that issue, and that makes a lot of sense. And so the short answer to your question is, I don't know. That's the type of thing that if somebody asked me the question outside of a public hearing, I'd call Paulo and ask him, if I'm being honest about it. So I don't know. But I understand the concern, as I was saying to you, Mr. Bender. I get that. That wasn't our client's intent. That wasn't even in his mind, that, hey, I don't have to go back and renew the special exception. And maybe the special exception is the route to get there, but, you know, with the expanded use. But let me, I just can't, maybe, I don't know, Paulo, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I don't know if you can.
That just gets kind of strange in terms of like a PUD, because you have a use, and then if you can maybe structure it that way upon review. If they don't meet these defined criteria in the development agreement, then the use goes away until they re-meet the criteria verified by someone from the county. I mean, you can structure a PUD that way. It's just a lot of work.
And I mean, I think it's the same work, because they still have to go get permits for everything every year, or every event rather. And so they're still going to have to do that. And if the county has the right not to issue the permits because you didn't, you violated, or you didn't do something, or something happens that none of us have thought of in the area, and it just makes the continuance of of camping, 20 years from now to be a bad thing in that area, then they ought to be able to.
Well, the reason I mention it is because the PUD follows along with the property, not the property owner or the type of, who's going to run the operation or whatever.
I got it.
And now what we're doing is in the PUD, we're doubling the size of the campsite, and even if it's primitive or not, we're doubling the size, and it's going to have an impact on the property. And then we're looking at the PUD making it that they don't have to come back for review or a renewal. So then once it's in place, it's hard to kind of take it away, very hard. And because of the fact that they're increasing the size and asking for different things, they could do all this in their special exception also, not necessarily for a PUD.
I'm not so sure that they can. So that was the whole genesis for this exercise, was being able to keep the stuff there the rest of the time. I think I have a thought. I'm sensitive to y'all's time. Is that I hear you loud and clear, and that makes perfect sense. I think I can work with county staff and county legal to come up with a mechanism that that addresses the concern that if he sells it and the next person is not a good operator, we don't want to continue the operation. We want to be able to not issue the permits that they need to do camping. They have to come in and submit do things each time. Which is the same as revoking, it's the same amount of work as revoking the special exception. I think we can get to the same place as it would be under the special exception with the PD, and maybe even more custom tailored of a place and thing that makes it easier on county staff if something goes haywire with a future owner, as a condition.
The future owner or the owner.
Or the current owner,
yeah,
yes, sir,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, see, that's my only concern is
That's fair.
we're increasing the size of the operation, and we're allowing it to go without any kind of review or renewal. And that's just where I'm at on it. I don't want to knock it down. As far as the agriculture exemption, there's a lot of operations out there that have agriculture exemptions that also use it for commercial use. As a matter of fact, commercial use requires an agriculture exemption. So that shouldn't be it. Yes, sir?
If I may, a little unusual, I don't think staff will mind. I'm hearing you, and this has been very helpful. And obviously, because of the Sunshine Law, we need to have this conversation format such that the conversation is maybe continuing it till next month's meeting and try to come up with something that addresses that concern. And staff may say, no, we can't get there. And
Sure, as long as, I think, are we up to nearing the shot clock provisions?
we can, if we need to, we'll waive it.
Then it's up to this commission on whether or not you want more information.
Before we go there, your next event is just around the corner.
Oh, we're entitled to do the next event is the next event is
October,
yeah. They couldn't take advantage of this PD for that event
Okay,
anyway.
all right, thank you.
They're good. They've got a special exception until 2028.
That's what I wanted.
They're going to do the exact same thing they did last
They're
October.
operating under their current special exception for this year's events.
They're fully in compliance with everything. They got it down to a science. It's all good.
Perfect. All right.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we that we continue this item until the August meeting.
Yes, sir.
Whatever that date might be.
August 17th.
Until the August 17th meeting, to give the applicant additional time to come back to address the issues of concern.
I'll second.
Okay, I've got a motion to continue this to the August 17th meeting. How's that load could be? We had all those other continued.
Well, bring one.
We'll have at least 10 items.
I will commit that either I won't have a long presentation. I'm going to address this concern that Mr. Bender, Mr. Mills brought up primarily in terms of not being able to some extent, Ms. Shelley. I hear it. I understand it. I know what to do if we can do it.
Okay.
Or I'll report to you that we can't and just let you vote on it without that.
A motion to continue this case PUD 23005 to our next meeting of August the 17th from Mr. Bender and a second from Mr. Costa. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Patterson.
I think we've beaten this dog. I was ready to approve it, send it in for approval today. I don't think it's going to do anything more than just have the same discussion that we're having today. So,
Well, they were just going to try to address the, and I understand what you're saying. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to
No,
interrupt.
go ahead.
I'll certainly commit on behalf of the property owner, and I have enough of a relationship to know that I can make representation. If you were to vote to approve it and pass it along, or majority of you did, I will commit to you that I will work on that issue before it comes to county council, and I'm on the record saying it, figuring out how to say that collectively the county council had this, or members of the county council had, PLDRC had this concern, and I will do that and we'll address that, and that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, well, I have a motion on the floor at the moment to continue in a second, so I'm going to run through that unless they're willing to withdraw the motion, but we'll run it through.
I will say that if it's not continued, I'm not in a position to support it today.
Understood.
And, okay, so we have a motion on the floor to continue to the next meeting. Any other discussion on the motion? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
no.
No.
Okay, so carried 4 to 3.
Can we get a roll call, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Member Bender?
Yeah, no.
This is to continue.
But to continue it? Yes.
So just for clarifying, you are voting to continue, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Member Shelley? Chair Mills?
Yes.
Member Costa?
Nope.
Member Patterson?
No.
Member Sixma?
No.
Mr. Chair, may I be heard? And then I'm not going to say another word, I promise. Absolutely promise.
Okay. Well, the motion fails to carry with a split vote.
Mr. Chair, may I be heard for just a moment?
Yes, go ahead.
I can count votes. And I heard, and I'm not just polite, I heard what y'all, 3 of you at least, said. And so if it doesn't get continued, we're going to be stuck with a 3-3 vote. And what do you all do with the, if I may, what do you all do with the tie vote?
Well, it's a tie vote is grounds for continuance if there's nothing that comes out. So the chair can call for any question for either approval with conditions, or denial. And if any of those don't have a question, then it moves on to the county council with a recommendation, technical denial for failure to obtain a majority.
I appreciate you. I would love to take this case forward with a recommendation of approval, unanimous approval, especially from this body. And if I can address at least a couple of y'all's, I don't know that I can address Michelle's concerns, but I think I can address Mr. Bender's and Mr. Mills' concerns vis-a-vis the ability of staff to, if such bad things happen, take it away.
I just want something you're able to review.
I got you. And so maybe we get,
Even
by
a review,
continuing
it
it, we
doesn't have
get
to
there. We
necessarily-
get there.
Okay. All right, so that motion would either fail, let me ask you this, do we have any other motions on the floor?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I want to make a motion to forward the rezoning application, case number PUD-23-005 to the county council for final approval with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
Would you, we can add a consideration in there, can we not?
Yes,
For the county
either the
council?
maker of the motion can do it, or someone can make an amendment, add some additional considerations or conditions that would go into the development agreement before presentation to council.
That's what so he can move forward to the county council and include the concerns that we've addressed here today without a review or some sort of something in the PUD to do it.
Shelley can make that amendment, correct? That motion?
So, Mr. Patterson?
Oh, Mr. Patterson.
Anybody?
Then you would make a motion to amend that? Okay. I'll take a motion to amend, and who's making the motion to amend? Mr. Patterson. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a second from Mr. Costa, the motion to amend the motion. Okay. To include the concerns that we addressed as far as the review or some sort of mechanism to be able to address concerns.
Yeah, that if there are that if there are violations, they can not approve
Okay.
the permit.
We're going to take a motion on the amendment. I mean, we're
Take a vote.
vote on the. Okay, vote on the amendment. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Yeah, you had a comment. I wanted to make a comment.
Oh, did you want to make a comment? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just said that.
Understood.
Okay.
I got it loud and clear.
Probably a roll
We'll work
vote,
on
Mr.
it.
Chair.
We'll get that. We're okay with it. Okay. Makes sense. Quite frankly.
All right.
Probably a roll call vote, I would say.
Okay.
This is
All
for
those-
the motion on the amendment.
Yeah.
Roll call.
A motion on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 5-1.
Mhm.
Now we're going to make the
The original motion.
original motion with the amendment. Okay. Any discussion on that motion?
You read whatever that motion is.
I believe it was a motion to approve the.
With the amendment.
Yeah, with the amendment, to include, I guess, a review criteria, and if there's violations to not,
Yes.
not commit any permits.
There you go. Okay. All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries 5-1 with Mr. Bender in decision.
Thank you, everybody, and I am sorry for making that so difficult. Remember at the beginning, I said something that's simple turns into something difficult? Apparently, it's just me.
Wrong set of tools you brought today.
May I be excused?
Ms.
Mr.
Shelley,
Chair,
can
may I be
get the
excused?
final case brought it. Did you read the final case?
Case number Z-23-009.
No, wait a minute.
Nope. It's 023.
023.
Oh, I said 0 instead of O.
Okay.
Sorry. I'm reading I was like, this
Okay.
is it. Yeah. Okay. Case number O, 23-009, ordinance 2023-33, revisions to rules of procedure to provide limitations on continuances for items heard by the PLDRC.
Mr. Sham.
Hi, good morning. Steve Shams with Planning Development Services. So this came about on May 10th, 2023. The County Council identified a need to increase efficiency in public hearings, determined that county staff have a responsibility to provide a thorough review in a reasonable amount of time. Reasonableness is defined in Florida statutes as the 180-day review period. The PLDRC will be permitted to continue an item once to a future PLDRC public hearing. The County Council discussed two limitations to continuances. The first limitation being that the items approved by the PLDRC, such as variances, if a continuance is proposed, it can be no later than 4 months after the initial hearing date. And the second limitation applies to items approved by County Council, such as land use changes, rezonings, and special exceptions. If proposed, the item can be continued no later than 3 months after the initial hearing date. Limitations are not applicable in extraordinary circumstances, such as natural disasters, or to items not heard by the PLDRC. The applicant has the right to request another continuance or for a longer period, provided a shot clock waiver is submitted in writing. Since this was originated from the County Council, I will defer to our council.
Sure. This accommodates two issues. If you recall, we had a variance that went before this commission, I think 3 or 4 times on the same item. It was in Bethune Beach. So this basically says, you got one continuance, you better come with all your information because this commission isn't, has no obligation to keep continuing it. The other one is for items that need to go to council, so we meet that shot clock provision of 180 days for some kind of final decision. This mainly impacts staff-initiated comprehensive plan amendments, because we can't request in or waive in writing the continuance provision. One of the this also, when it says it does not affect those items not heard before council, so anything on your items to be continued or withdrawn, those are there because the applicant requested the withdrawal, the applicant requested the continuance, or they never met the due public notice provision. So when that actually comes before this council and it's open and discussed, that's when the continuance limitation applies. So it allows a one-time continuance by commission on its own. Basically it by itself needs its own needs additional information. Any additional conditions, you either take a straight up vote for approval or denial, or the applicant has to request that continuance by itself.
Okay. Do we need an ordinance to that, or would it be better served if we just tighten up on our criteria as far as what we need for a continuance?
It's always nice to have some of those procedural aspects kind of in writing, so that someone doesn't call foul saying, "Hey, you've continued me too many times. I want," or someone demanding an up or down vote. We can point to something in the ordinance saying, no, the commission has serious concerns about your application. It needs additional information. It can continue one time. So come back with those additional information. After that, you're entitled to your up and down vote. At all.
This stems from what like Clay was talking about this morning, correct? From the county council's goal setting meeting?
Yes. So
that's what this came out of?
Yes. And it's also, I think, Frank, you're the one who asked me about, is there any way to limit, we had one item that was continued like 3 or 4 times. Is there any way to limit the number of times you can do that? So this kind of serves two purposes. We are subject to the statutory shot clocks.
Mm-hmm.
We've got some council direction to kind of streamline our processes.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of provides some guidance to both the staff, the commission, and applicants about continuances. What's the usual standard for it, and how many times the commission can force a continuance on an application.
The applicant could still withdraw and refile without the time frame of a year or 2 years. Is that correct?
I think they can withdraw by right so long as it's not more than 3 days prior to the hearing. Afterwards, if it's been noticed and it's within 3 days, they need your approval to withdraw the application. And they are not subject to the 1 year limitation. The 1 year limitation applies if this commission approves or denies an application. If they withdraw it, that doesn't trigger it. But they do need your approval if they request a continuance too close to the public hearing. It's so that it's to make sure that, for example, you have a controversial application and then they're receiving a lot of community input. They don't want to at the last minute send a withdrawal notice and then have all the community just not be aware that this item is not going to be heard. So we put that limitation on withdrawals. That's a current existing limitation. But if they do withdraw it, they're not subject to the 1 year limitation. They can come back at any time by filing a new application.
So if we continue it and then an applicant realizing that they can't still give all the information they need by the date set, as long as they did it 3 days prior, they could withdraw and then they could refile at a later date.
Yes. A withdrawal of an application is that application is dead. they're going to have to come with a new application. If they continue it once and then they're at a new hearing and then realizes that they still need additional information, the applicant themselves can request in writing that the commission, provide another continuance.
Any other questions for staff?
Prepare to make a motion.
All right.
All right. Make a motion on case O-23-009 be forwarded to the county council with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
Got a motion on the floor from Mr. Frank Costa to forward O-23-009 to county council with a recommendation of approval, and a second from Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay. That takes care of all of our new business, and do we have any public items? Do we have any
No, sir.
staff items?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
You asked me to bring this item back to you. The City of DeLand and Volusia County are reinstituting their joint city-county coordinating committee. Currently, it requires 3 members of the PLDRC to sit on that board. We've got Jeff Bender, Ronnie Mills, and then the third was Jay Young. So we will need to find a third member who's willing to sit on that board. Right now, they are looking at changing the dates and times. So our question to you is, would you prefer, for those who are already on there, or for those who may want to volunteer, would you prefer a day meeting, an evening meeting? Are there preferences of days? We're trying to figure out what day to schedule this for, and we need a third member.
My experience is over the last 10 years, I've only been to one meeting that they actually had. Are they planning on trying to get that back going again to where they actually have meetings?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who would like to do it? We got.
They volunteer.
Pat's so nice to volunteer, since he lives in the land.
Okay, can I get was it something we have to appoint, or just let you know who it is?
I think it'd probably be best to have this commission appoint
Okay.
the 3 members. Might as well just do them all, so we just kind of reset all of them.
Anyone else wanting to do that? Mr. Bender, are you willing to stay on? That's right. It didn't. I made one meeting and that was it.
So I will let you know, so that you may be seeing with this group, we're taking a much closer look at the DeLand 2050 vision plan that they have. You've had some cases come before you where there were discussions of whether these are rural areas or urban areas,
Yeah.
and the timing of that, and those are things that will be discussed in those meetings.
Okay. Okay, so do we want to do each individual or all 3? Somebody make a motion. Jeff Bender, myself, and Mr. Patterson.
All right, I'll make a motion that we appoint Pat Patterson, Ronnie Mills, and Jeff Bender to the Joint City County Committee.
Second.
Right?
Yeah, I got a motion for Mr. Costa to appoint Mr. Patterson, Mr. Mills, and Mr. Bender to the Joint City County Committee. From Mr. Costa, and a second from Ms. Shelley. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And just
Okay.
as follow-up to that, do any of you have a strong opinion on dates or times you'd like to meet? Because we're working through all of that now.
I'm pretty retired right now. If you can catch me off a cruise. Yeah. Yeah. I don't have any problem either way.
Very good. Thank you.
Do you, Mr. Patterson? That is not a specific, is it?
Well, we're trying to determine when they want to continue meeting. They used to meet at 1:15 on a Wednesday when they needed to meet. It'll still be as needed based on the projects that are up for consideration. And we were discussing whether it should be shifted to the evenings or remain in the daytime. But I think what I'm hearing is that daytime is okay for all three of you.
And could we possibly make it a Wednesday before our Thursday meeting,
We certainly could.
rather than to put it in somewhere else in the calendar?
We'll ask the city, because they are the ones that will be implementing them, and we'll tell them that that would be our recommendation.
That would make it better for me. Mr. Bender's.
Do you need staff there? We'll see if we can convince them.
Okay.
We'll talk to Deland and see if they're willing to do that.
Any other staff comments?
No, sir.
Okay, commission comments, other than Park.
I
We know
have
that.
a question.
Mr.
Were
Bender.
all of the meetings that were going to be done with the districts and in the different, have they been completed? Because I still never got any emails notifying me where any meeting was going to be or anything like that. So were all of them done?
They were all done, and we made a special effort to send them out to the PLDRC.
Yeah, I didn't. I never.
So we
got
need to
them.
check your email again and make sure that we're all looking at the same emails. We have the one from your most recent application.
Yeah.
So, but they are completed. We will be presenting our results to the county council in next month.
And was the one at the fairgrounds, any kind of participation?
My apologies, I misspoke. We'll be presenting those results to you all at your next meeting. And you asked another question I didn't
So I can
hear.
ask that question. Because I know the ones I went to, it was just staff, myself.
Well, I will tell you that we worked with our community information folks and continued multiple social media blasts, and the numbers did increase throughout the process till we got to between 20 to 30 people at those later meetings, and we got some very good input.
Any other commission comments? Mr. Patterson?
Yeah, and I'd ask this as a member of the National Association of Parliamentarians, I wonder if someday we'll like start using Robert's Rules of Order, the 12th edition, maybe change things a little bit.
You can. One of the issues with using Robert's rules for quasi-judicial procedures is it doesn't mesh well with the type of like quasi-judicial, almost court-like procedure. If it's a normal discussion, the normal parliamentary procedures make sense. You don't start talking until there's like an actual motion to discuss. Here, staff introduces a topic, the applicant introduces a topic. There's, you're constrained by the evidence that is accepted, and then you start with like a pseudo Robert's rules at the end after you've taken all that account, and then you start discussion. So usually, most of the local governments that I've kind of worked for, they do separate their quasi-judicial procedures from their normal parliamentary discussions. So we can start using that. It's just we're going to have to modify a few things.
Well, I know that the federal, state, and local supersedes over Robert's Rules of Order. I just think, old business is old, and it should be just unfinished business on the agenda for Robert's Rules of Order. And, that's what I'm saying. Roberts allows for, on small board groups or commissions that you wouldn't need a second motion, just have a motion and go from there and not have a second. Because a second only means that more than one person wants to discuss the issue. It doesn't mean that person agrees or disagrees. So I'm just suggesting that. I'm very active with the National Association. That's why I just wanted to bring it up, possibly to maybe look at that. Okay.
What we could do is address some of the concerns in our bylaws, could we not, Mr. Storia?
Yes, yes, you can provide some provisions in the bylaws. I can bring you what's kind of like a draft kind of quasi-judicial procedure template. So if you would like to, you can kind of modify how this commission wants to work and operate in terms of a lot of the essentially items that you provide.
Let me look at it.
Sure. Really, the only caveat is.
No, you gonna create me getting out of this seat. What you gonna do? You're gonna create me getting out of this seat is what you're doing. No, I'm just joking there. Okay, any other commission comment?
The one vacant seat we have, nothing on the horizon?
I think that's District 4, so Mr. Kent needs a District 4 representative from the unincorporated area.
They still hadn't found anybody, huh?
Right. So that's kind of the issue, because we limit the membership, so no more than, I think, 2 can be from an incorporated city, and everyone else has to be from the unincorporated county.
I had suggested to some people, because that District 4 comes into West Volusia and in the unincorporated area, but I couldn't find anybody that I could send over to talk to Troy Kent. So, but I'll keep trying to find somebody. He may want to get somebody outside of Ormond Beach. So.
Okay, press and citizen comments. This meeting is adjourned.